All right. See if we're live. Just a moment here. Just checking. It's the first time I've done this. So, hi, and welcome to my chat with Brad from Endless, who I'm going to introduce in a minute. Thanks for stopping by. I wanted to give a little context before I bring in our guest of honor. I wanted to give a little context behind the conversation we're having and, kind of how we got here. So if you're a fan of the channel, you know that I've been skating Endless products for 2.5 years, basically the 2.5 years I've had the channel. And I've become a bit of a fan, honestly. And, I became a fan by purchasing 3 of their frames. First was the Endless 90, then the Endless 100, and then more recently this year, I guess the end of last year, though I didn't use them until this year, the Endless Arc. And I became a fan, like I said, by using the products. So this stream was my idea. This isn't like a sponsored stream. Brad didn't put me up to this. He was gracious enough to agree to it, but he had emailed me, actually. We hadn't spoken until recently, and he had emailed me when I had the ARCs and asked me, what I thought of them. And I was like, oh, it's funny you asked me, because I'm in the middle of trying to get that review out. I got the review out, and then we started chatting, on email and stuff. And we were having a conversation about something. I forget exactly what it was. And I was like, you know what? This is stuff that would probably be cool in an interview. Would you mind being interviewed on my channel? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. So here we are. And I guess without further ado, I will bring Brad in right now, ladies and gentlemen. Here is Brad, founder and designer of Endless Blading Company.
Hey,
hello,
Jim.
Brad.
Hey there.
How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And we've got some folks in the chat. Thank you so much for hanging out and listening. Let's get right into it. So, the conversation we're going to have, I'd like to keep it kind of conversational, but it's a bit of an interview with Brad, and just to get, kind of his mindset, what's behind Endless, how he does things, etc. But I think I wanted to start, Brad, with some of getting into your background. What's your skating background? How long you've been skating? What kind of skating do you do? Stuff like that.
Sure. So I started skating when I was a teenager. This would have been a long time ago. I think it was 1991. I got my first pair of rollerblades. And right around that time, that's when kind of rollerblading really took off. All my friends and I, we had been skateboarders up to that moment, but it was literally overnight, everyone that skateboarded started rollerblading. And so I had some Lightning TRSs skated those for a number of years, all throughout the 90s. And then graduated to bigger and bigger wheels. I think I was skating 4x80 by 1999. The first skate I had, that rollerblade was 4x70. And then I think I put on 4x72 and then upgraded to 4x76. And then, I got new skates in 1999. That was 4x80. And then by the mid 2000s, it was 2008, I had this rollerblade speed machine. It was kind of like a high-end fitness boot. And that was 4x90. And then from there, it was just, bigger and faster.
I feel like the wheels, I feel like 76 was kind of about as big as they got for a while, huh? And I probably started around the same time as you. I was born in 82, so I would have been 9 in 91, right? And I honestly can't remember when I started skating, but it might have been around the same time. I didn't continue skating, like you did, but I kind of stopped around high school when I stopped playing hockey, essentially.
I skated all through high school and college. I mean, I grew up in Connecticut, and we didn't have it was very hilly, and the roads were kind of rough pavement. So we had built a bunch of ramps that, we had skateboarded on. We had a half pipe in my friend's backyard and a bunch of launch ramps. So for us, it was just all about, launching over my dad's car and skating on the half pipe. I didn't realize you could actually skate down the street on your rollerblades. That was something I actually never did until I probably got to college. a number of years later. Um, but yeah, so,
Yeah.
but the skating I do now, to answer your question, for a long time, all throughout the early 2000s, it was for me, that's when I'd moved out to California in the late 90s. And um, I I didn't know anybody that skated, and so I ended up doing a lot of like distance skating and just skating for fitness. Um, and so that probably was all I did, probably up until about 2017 or so. And then I started to get really inspired of watching channels like Bill Stoppard's and Sean Unwin's, and decided, hey, maybe I could practice learning some new skills. Like I think my only stop that I knew how to do at that point was like a T stop. And so I learned how to power slide, and then, met some friends, and we started pushing each other to learn other skills.
That's cool. My mind was like literally blown when I first realized that people slid urethane wheels on asphalt. I didn't know it was even possible. But so I'm kind of similar and definitely inspired by Bill Stoppard. That's kind of the reason I'm here, honestly. At least
Nice.
what started it. Okay, so how about your engineering background? So the folks watching, you may not know this about Brad, but and correct me if I'm wrong, you have 18 years of experience as a mechanical engineer in the aerospace industry, and which obviously probably helps quite a bit with what you're doing with Endless, right? Could you explain your engineering background just a little bit? Kind of what your
Yeah,
experience was
sure.
there?
So I studied aerospace engineering in school. Promptly moved out to California to take a job as a mechanical engineer. I worked for Lockheed Martin for a little over 18 years as a designer. And during that time, I got to work on some really amazing projects that I probably will never be able to talk about. But yeah, I really, kind of honed my design skills during that time. I specifically worked on programs that were spacecraft and defense related. So at a certain point, I don't know why it never had occurred to me to like make anything for my skates up until, probably about 2019 it was. But to me, it was just like, okay, this is like it's a bracket, you know, like I've designed plenty of brackets in my career that go on spacecraft and missiles. Like, why not design one for my skates? Um, so yeah, so that it
Okay,
definitely, like I had the skill set, it was something that it was part of my daily work. So
sure.
I
I
didn't have to
imagine.
go learn anything new, really.
Yeah, I mean, even on like the software, even like designing things and
Yeah,
using software and all that stuff, to let alone all the actual science behind
yeah,
materials and how they work and all that stuff, physics and what have you.
yeah, exactly. And what's interesting is like I worked my entire career for one company. So like I learned to design things the Lockheed way.
Mm,
We didn't. It wasn't a design process where we were doing like high volume or making products for a consumer industry. These are like onesie twosie type of things for government customers. So they kind of need to work the first time and be perfect. So
right.
it's a lot of like analysis and um, you know uh, dotting your i's and crossing your t's, and like big elaborate review processes. So all that stuff had been ingrained in the way that I approach design. Especially I have like a very strong like systems engineering kind of approach, like a top down design approach, I think, in terms of requirements, um, and then kind of breaking that down into like solving the more detailed problems.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure in that industry there's a lot of tape of all colors, and like you don't just kind of fly by the seat of your pants there.
No, yeah,
Um,
no, it wasn't like a startup mentality. It was, yeah, a lot of process. But I did, I think, through all that, learn a certain amount of rigor in the way
sure.
that I do my designs. So, um, Like it really bugs me if I make a prototype and there's a mistake or there's something that I overlooked, because I'm like, come on, that's not the way that's done, you know?
Yeah. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, awesome. All right, and then we can talk about this real quick, just so folks know. So, Endless is not your first company, right?
No,
You
it's
started.
not.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what did you do before Endless? And after
So
Lockheed, I guess.
yeah, so in it's probably 2013. I had started another company in the pro audio industry. Um, for a number of years before that. Music is another one of my passions, and recording music. A number of years before that, I had kind of started moonlighting as an audio electronics designer. And so in 2016, that company finally grew to the point where I kind of was faced with this question of like, hey, do I leave my full-time job and just pursue my own business? And so I took that leap and, went full time working for myself, developing that business. And so I think that was another thing that really helped me um, manifest endless blading, was that, on the one hand, I have these mechanical design skills. And then I also have this experience building a brand and running a company that manufactures a consumer product. And so when I started Endless, it really was meant to just be like a little fun side project. It wasn't like I'm going to start a big company and, take over the world or anything. I had only intended to make like the Endless 80, 90, and 100. And it was just going to be like set and forget. I'm not going to think about this. But then the pandemic, you know, that, I launched the company just a few months before the pandemic. And so when all the lockdowns occurred and skating blew up, I was like, oh crap, I think we have a real company here. Which means
Yeah.
like, all the administrative headaches of running a business.
Yeah, as I was thinking of like things to ask you and I was writing them down, I was like, oh, I wonder what it's like to be like a small business owner during a pandemic. And I'm like, wait a second, this guy's not running a restaurant. His business was probably in amazing
Oh,
shape because of the pandemic. It must have been
oh, both
nuts.
both businesses did really well up until the audio business started to have problems when I ran out of inventory. And then, because it was an electronics manufacturing business, I was faced with all the part shortages and chip shortages. So that really struggled for a little bit there. But thankfully, I had Endless was growing as the other company was kind of seeing a downturn. So
Okay.
I didn't go homeless, which was good.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good to hear. I'm actually going to pop a question up in chat because, oh, by the
Sure.
way, everyone watching, whether you're watching live right now or afterwards, this is the first time doing something like this, so I'm not necessarily like trained to watch chat and everything. So go easy on me. I'm doing my best here. But I wanted to pop this one up because you can probably answer it quickly. Rolling with Rupster has asked, will it take to get the mirror finish for the Trinity mounted frames? Love the content products. Keep killing it, guys.
That is a good question. I don't know why I haven't made any Trinity Mercury finish frames, and I have a big run of product that is on a boat right now, and I'm sad to say that none of those frames that are coming in are going to be Mercury finish, but hopefully on maybe the next run I can do it. Um, I honestly didn't expect it would be as popular as it was. When I made that frame, I kind of had this idea. I was talking with some friends and we were joking about making a disco ball frame. And
Okay.
I was like, I'm going to do this. And I remember getting the first prototype, and which was an Endless 100. Um, and I remember opening it, and I was outside, and it was just like gleaming in the sun, and the like laser beams are like shooting off of it, and I was so giddy. It looked so amazing. Oh, by the way, here's some Mercury
Oh
right
man.
here.
Oh, look at that. That's someone. Yeah, someone just asked for Trinity Mount Mercury arc frame. So
Yeah.
I guess what you're
Well, first
holding
I
the
got to do
Trinity, right?
yeah, I got to do the arc frame first for Trinity. But yeah,
Sure.
I just made a limited run of the Trinity, and it was kind of an expensive finish. So I wasn't sure how well it was going to sell, but apparently people like it. So I'll have to do more.
Okay. So then you envisioned disco balls, not Bill Stoppard poolside when you were designing the Mercury. I don't know if you've seen the Bill's video or anyone here has, but that
It
was
was so good. I think Bill wins for like the best photos yet. I mean,
yeah, that was a creative place to do
yeah,
that shoot. I enjoyed that. I also love seeing Bill on Endless. Like I was always like, Bill, you got to get off of those adapts. You have to try a rockered frame. You got to get into some Endless stuff. Now I know that people skate Endless frames on adapts, but you see them less often on those.
so
Um,
Bill actually had his endless frames back in 2020.
That's true. And I remember there was like this FR1 city skate
Yeah,
that he was trying to put together. I don't know if you were part of that or not, but like I think it was in collaboration with Pro Skaters Place and maybe with you, but it
yeah,
seemed like it kind of fizzled. I'm speaking for Bill and I don't mean to do that, but like I think it seemed like it kind of fizzled just because I guess inventory maybe became a problem or demand or something. It kind of just nowhere. Because when I was shopping for skates, that seemed like exactly what I wanted. And I was like, and I couldn't find them. Like
yeah,
and I was like, oh, I guess this never happened.
yeah. That was that time. That was like summer of 2020, and that's when it started to be difficult to get inventory from China. So
Sure. Okay. So all right. So what? I guess then to back up a little bit to starting the company. When did it start? It started in 2019. Whereabouts? Like you said, a
so
few months before the pandemic, or
yeah, so I designed the frames, the 80, 90, and 100 frames, like summer of 2019, and
okay.
then I started putting a website together like end of 2019. But then my friend Cecil decided to post a picture of his setup on Reddit, and that was like I think January of 2020. And
Okay.
then the response to that photo, I think a lot of people were like, "What is that? And how can I get
Mm.
it?" And I remember him texting me saying like, "Hey, you better finish your website like within the next couple days." And I was like, "What did you do?"
That's awesome. I guess that's a good thing, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then so then all right. So you started Endless since around that time, and so I guess what to back up again, and you partially like what did inspire you? Like what put you over the edge to finally like
Like, why
decide
did
to
I do
start a
it?
frame? Yeah, like why? I mean, I guess I could assume why frames specifically. Did it just line up with your engineering background and your interest as a skater? Like what? Why is Endless here?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's really like two things that kind of led to me deciding I'm going to make a frame. And let me just say that the intention initially was never to make a company. It was just to make something for myself. Um, like I'm a designer. Like that's my program that I run. Right? Is Brad just gets up every morning and designs and creates, and like that's my flow state is just designing and creating. So whether it's music or it's creating some skate frames in CAD or whatever, and so I was just going to design some stuff for me and my friends. I had just met some new friends that skated, and I was very enthusiastic about skating with them. And so I just thought I'm going to design some some parts for them. And what led me to do that was two things. I had a Flying Eagle supersonic frame, like a 3x110 setup, and I had gone skating one night and tripped on those those blind man bumps on the curb, like on the
Yeah,
at the
the little nubs,
intersection.
the
Yeah, the little
grid of
nubs.
nubs. Yeah, like
Yeah,
yeah.
it was like I think I was trying to step over them, and I ended up tripping on the curb as I was skating, and I totally ate crap and like fell forward and skinned my knees, and in the process I bent the frame. Like the front of the frame went like, and I was shocked that I was able to do that because I'm not a heavy guy. Like I weigh like maybe 145 or something. And I sent a note to Flying Eagle USA at the time, and I was like, "Hey, I bent your frames. Like, I think you guys really need to take a look at this design." And the guy didn't believe me, and I sent him pictures, and he was like, "Huh, we've never seen that before." And I was like, "Yeah, not good. And so I thought to myself, like, if I ever design a frame, I'm going to make them sturdy enough so this never happens to anybody. So that was the first thing. The second thing was I had this in 2008. I purchased these rollerblade Speed Machine 6.0 boots. These are those kind of the high-end fitness boot I was referring to. And they were what Rollerblade called fiber tech. It was like I don't know if it was carbon fiber or what, but they kind of look like an Air Jordan, but they were a skate. A lot of red, white, and black. But they were a 4x90 setup with a 285 millimeter frame. And I loved those skates. So that was like my first big wheel skate beyond, 80 millimeter. And, the length of that frame gave me a lot of stability. The 90s, as you know, is just like, it's fast, it's smooth, you still get good acceleration. When the original rollerblade wheels wore out, I put on some MPC Road War wheels. And I didn't know who MPC was at the time, but those were really good wheels even back then. And I was like living my best rollerblading life, skating that setup for a while, probably until like maybe 2011 or 2012, something like that, when I graduated to my next rollerblade setup. And so anyway, fast forward to like 2018, I decided, hey, let me pull my old skates out and skate these. I haven't skated them in a while. And I remember taking them on a skate, and I was blasting down the roads in our neighborhood. And I just remember thinking, like, this is the best setup ever. I love this thing. It's so fast, like just rolls so smoothly. And mind you, I put on the same like used MPC wheels that were like 10 years old. So they had, a decently worn, like natural rocker worn into them. And I just remember thinking, yeah, I love this. I love this feeling. And so when I got to that point where I was like, I want to make something for my friends, I knew I kind of wanted to combine a nice 3-wheel setup with that kind of nimble, more versatile 4x90 setup. And so, yeah, it was kind of a no-brainer to like just put those two configurations together into one frame.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't maybe it's my foot size. I think you and I are fairly similar size. Like I'm a Mondo 0.26, I guess, 265 millimeter long feet. And yeah, I don't know. I've said it on the channel like a million times. Like the 4x90, like the Endless 90 is my favorite setup on my FRSL. But like it is, I don't know, it is a fantastic setup. At least for me, it is. Never thought about tri-skate. I didn't think I'd like tri-skates at all, really. But I still use the tri-skate setup I just did 40 miles on Memorial Day, actually.
Nice.
In the Endless 90s.
Yeah, like at that time, like I was doing a lot of trail skating, and so we were skating 3-wheel setups all the time. Oh, the other thing I should add is it wasn't just the bent Flying Eagle frame that kind of pushed me over the edge. It was also I had an FR, I forget what it's called, but at the 3x110 that's really short, it's like 231 millimeters.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, when I got that FR1 with the 3x110 setup, it was so short for my foot, which is 270 millimeters. And my friend had the same setup. And I remember us both thinking like, we're going to kill ourselves. Like we always felt like we were going to fall back. And
right.
So that was why I wanted to make a longer tri-skate setup. Or in my mind, I was thinking it's a medium length tri-skate setup. At that time, Rollerblade had their 255 millimeter 3x110, which is, I think, a much more reasonable length for a tri-skate than what Powerslide and FR had been offering. But my skate, before I got that FR1, I was on a Rollerblade Tempest, which was, essentially like 4x110. So it was giant. So I had been used to skating like a really long setup. And so the Endless 90 at 276 millimeters with 3x110 to me seemed like medium length.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, and that seems to be the way things are going too. It's almost like someone's going to hate me for saying this, but like it seems like it's almost like 90's the default at least size that a lot of people are using for like urban skating. 90 and 90 is going to get you at least what 273 millimeters. I know the Endless 90
Yeah.
are 276, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and about that Flying Eagle frame, that's shocking that 145-pound man going, I don't know how fast you were going, but like you're not Takeshi I'm going to butcher his name, Yasutoko, flying off a vert ramp or something, right? Like you're crossing the
No,
street and you bent the frame.
they're thin. I mean, the reason I bought it is because I thought the frame looked cool. And I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of people that buy frames they think look cool. But what I quickly learned the hard way was looking cool does not equate to well engineered. And so
Okay.
that's when I thought I can engineer something that performs better and hopefully looks cool. And so like the frame walls on that particular frame, they're pretty thin, and it's spindly. It kind of has like that kind of arched kind of front portion of the frame. So yeah.
Okay.
So for me, that was a problem to solve.
It's what's cool too is like you were like, I can solve this problem. So like meaning I have the understanding. I like skating, and I also understand how to build things, how to design things and materials and stuff.
Yeah.
It was like right in your wheelhouse. It's like
Yeah.
I joke with people that being a software engineer, I'm a software engineer for those who don't know. I joke with people that like being able to program things is like a superpower because there are problems that I can just solve because I have this skill set that lends itself to solving a problem. So that must have been like a really empowering thing to be like, I can actually do something about this. I can make a better frame instead of most people without the expertise or, the know-how would just be like, somebody should do something about this instead of
Yeah.
I will do something about this. So that
Yeah.
must have been really cool for you.
Yeah, it was cool. It's always satisfying to like, and you probably find this with coding, like to have an idea and manifest it as something that does the thing that you had envisioned. My friends thought I was crazy, by the way. They were like, "You spent how much money on these?" Because like making like I think I made like 5 sets of the first prototypes of the Endless 90. It was a few $1,000s. And so they
Yeah.
thought I was nuts because, they spent $300 on their skates, and here I am spending whatever I spent, $3,000 or something on some frames. But
Sure.
going back to your point about the 90 millimeter and why it wasn't more popular, I think in 2019, 90 millimeter was like going extinct. Like Seba had just ended like the previous year their GT90 rollerblade. I don't know if rollerblade had any 4x90 setups. If they did, it was maybe only like a Maxim 4x90, and no other brands had 4x90. And so for me, I was just like, it was such nostalgia for that 4x90 rollerblade setup. I was just like, I don't care that this is not a popular thing. I'm just going to make it because like I know how much I enjoyed that experience, and I just want my friends to have that same experience.
Right. Or at least I guess there weren't many people doing like free skating in that size. Cause I guess like the Wizard NR90, those, I don't know when they came out actually. I want to say, I feel like they came out, actually, I don't know when they actually like
I
came
don't,
out for
yeah, I don't
purchase or
know
whatever.
either. But
Um,
at that point, I don't think the overall, like the broader rollerblading world was as aware of wizard skating as they are now. So like in the US, 2018, I had never even heard of power slide, or
hmm,
2017, I had never heard of power slide. And I had never heard of like Seba and FR until that point either. Like, in California, we basically had especially in the early 2000s, it was like you go into a skate shop and you saw 3 brands, Solomon, K2, and Rollerblade. Those were your
right.
options. And
Right.
then Rossi's existed, on the more on the aggressive side of things. But yeah, I never had seen a power slide or a Seba skate until 2018.
Okay. And yeah, and I guess yeah, and it's like I don't know. Like I said, it's such a good length, at least 90 millimeters for like urban free skating. Um, so another question about Endless, actually, while we're talking about the company, how big is the operation? Is it just Brad? Do you have a
Yeah, it's just
team
me.
of elves like carving these frames out of aluminum, or
It's I would say there's like 1.2 of us. There's
okay?
my friend Andrew helps with the customer service. So if anybody, makes a purchase and writes in with a question, Andrew's usually the one that answers those emails. But in terms of, running the social media and day-to-day stuff, and obviously all the design work and marketing, that's all me.
Okay, all right, cool. Um, Actually, I'm going to ask. I'll pause for a question real quick. Not pause, but Kevin Nars is asking: has any other brands reached out to Brad about collaborating on frames?
Yeah, there have been some. There's a few brands that I'm actively talking with about some potential future collaborations. So stay tuned.
Okay, thank you. Um, so what was your first frame? Was it the Endless 90? So like and those for those watching and for Brad, I got into skating like the 5 second background of my skating. I played roller hockey as a kid, like pickup in streets with grass growing up through the cracks and parking lots and stuff. Like I said, it felt weird to skate without a hockey stick. Like when I got back on skates, found Bill Stauber's channel, yada yada yada. So anyway, I have only been skating really as an adult since like the end of 2020. Um, and the Endless 90 existed, the 80 and the 100 may have been coming out around that time. Or the 100 may have been relatively new. But anyway, it's a long-winded way of asking what was your first frame? How did they come out in order?
So the first one I actually designed was the 90 because, like I said, I was obsessed with 4x90 at that point. And then I did the 80. So you want to hear the funny history of the Endless 80 and why it's not
Sure.
called the Endless 84? So
Yes.
uh, so 84 millimeter wheels was like not, they were like not even in existence at that time. Like, no, they're very unpopular. I don't think any skates use 84. It was hard to find them. I wanted to make a frame for my girlfriend that she was a beginner. She was just learning how to rollerblade. And I had this idea of I'm going to take a 4x80 frame, but I'm going to like stretch it out and make it more stable. And then of course it's going to have the balanced rocker. So it'll feel more intuitive for her to learn how to carve. And I sent the frame to a couple people to review and demo. Um, Maybe Drew Patton from City Blades.
No.
So Drew, we were talking one day on the phone, and he's like, you can fit 84 millimeter wheels on this frame, don't you? And I was like, no, you can't. I was like, no, it's only 4x80. He's like, no, man, check it. It'll fit 84 millimeters. And I was like, how did I not check this? Like, what? It just was like, just completely escaped me. So I was like, sweet. I was like, even better. But I was like, nobody can get 84 millimeter wheels. So I'm going to call it the Endless 80. So it seems more familiar.
Sure.
And so that's
Sure.
why I put 80, 84, 100 on the side of the frame, like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so it was kind of just me being an idiot, I guess. But yeah, when I made the Trinity version, I decided to call it the Trinity 84.
Addison says, "Well, I didn't know Drew was involved in the design process. That's awesome."
Yeah. Drew and Brock actually were the first people outside of my friend group to try the Endless 80 frame.
Oh, cool. And I
Yeah.
guess I guess that's what it's similar to the 90 ES, which is actually like when I'm recommending, when people are like, oh, a lot of people are trying to figure out between 90 and 100. And a lot of people, it's one of the things I think about is cool about the 90 ES, which is extended stability, extra stability. I don't know what the
And
E stands for.
yeah, enhanced stability.
Enhanced. Wow, it was the third choice, not the first two I tried. But the it's a slightly longer endless 90 essentially, right? And I guess that would be like the endless 94 if 94 millimeter wheels. It would be the 94 or the 9094 one, or I guess the 9094. But yeah, I think
it's
that's a nice
basically like,
offering.
yeah, the ES sits right like halfway between the 100 and the 90. And, you know, for a lot of people, the 100 millimeters is just like, it's a little bigger than they feel comfortable with. And, but for somebody, you know, I've long thought, like when you go, sometimes you go to inline warehouse and you go and you pull up a skate and they show, I don't know why the brands do this. They show like a size 45 boot on a 4
Right.
by 80 frame. And it's just a inverted pyramid.
Yep.
And it's just like, it's bad. I mean, that's that first tri skate I had, right? That's so unstable. So rollerblade historically has been pretty good about offering bigger frame sizes for bigger boots. Like even my first Lightnings in the early 90s were, you know, like they had, I think, a 250 millimeter for the smaller sizes, then 270, and then maybe it was 290 for the biggest sizes, something like that. But yeah, but somewhere along the way, the manufacturers got this idea stuck in their head that you have to cram all the wheels together and can only do a 1 millimeter gap between your wheels. And it's
Right.
like, if you want a longer frame, you must go to a bigger wheel size. And I knew from that, you know, that 4 by 90 rollerblade frame I had, which was 285 millimeters, there were gaps
Sure.
between the wheels. So I just thought, I'm going to make a frame that actually looks like what 4 by 80 looks like on my size 40 or 42 boot,
Sure.
you know, for somebody that skates a 45 to 48. And that was the endless 90 ES.
Sure. And that's one I recommend. I've recommended a few times because people are like, well, I don't really want to go to 100. I think it's a little too tall. I'm kind of a beginner.
Yep.
And it's like, actually, this problem is literally solved. And there is a frame that was created for this purpose. It's called the Endless 90 ES. So
yeah,
it's nice that you offer that. It's one of your thoughtful frames, in my opinion. Just like the Arc CS, I would say it's a thoughtful frame in that I feel like it's hitting a segment of people that don't necessarily have a ton of options potentially because of foot size. It's weird because like all slalom skates usually come, maybe free skates too. There it's like, well, you either get the 76 or the 80 millimeter, and that's it. It doesn't go any higher than that. It's like around the EU 40 is where that split usually happens, which is like right around my foot size. Anyway, so let's get into like the frame, the nerdy stuff about
there's some
about
nerdy
frame design.
Yeah, there's some good nerdy questions that people are asking.
Yeah, if you want to, I don't know if you can click again, folks. My first time. You can't click them to highlight them. Which one did you want to answer? You can just read it, and I can bring it up as you're reading it if you'd like to.
Yeah,
feel free.
Sure. Let me just scroll through. I'm a little behind on what's in here. Martz has a bunch of good questions. He's got the one at 627.
Okay, so about CAD, this one?
Yeah.
What CAD programs did you use to design the endless frame? Did he do any finite element analysis? I sometimes think about designing skate tech someday as a mechanical, and I guess that's a mechanical engineering person. Thanks.
Yeah. So I use Creo, which used to be called Pro Engineer way back in the day. It's the same professional software we used at Lockheed. I still have like a version of it on my desktop computer that I use. So at this point, you know, like using a piece of CAD software for like over 20 years, I have no interest in learning anything new. So it's overkill to use like, you know, $20,000 software to design skate frames, but whatever. Do I do any finite element analysis? We have done some. This is something I talk about with Andrew a lot because he's a mechanical engineer as well. He's actually getting his PhD at Stanford. So he 3D. I got to give a shout out to Andrew for always 3D printing my frame concepts for me so we can do fit checks and, talk about how dumb they look on a certain boot. But Andrew, yeah, occasionally will help me do some finite element analysis. And we often talk about this in the speed skating segment of the industry. I think there's a high level of technical design going on, both in terms of like the wheels and the frames. And because those guys are performance driven.
Sure.
However, I don't believe that level of engineering really exists in what I'll call the recreational and urban skating markets, free skate markets. I think that has been largely driven by aesthetics. Maybe the frames get designed by industrial engineers who probably are less interested in doing a finite element analysis versus, picking some nice colors and, making sure the swooshes go in the right direction.
Right.
But I would like to bring more of that level of performance engineering to the products that I do.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? Like, especially as an engineer, you probably want everything to be as good as it could possibly be, right?
Yeah, I mean, for urban skating, free skating, recreational skating, it's not performance driven in the same way that it is for speed skating, where you care about weight reduction and
Sure.
engineering a certain like flex response to the frame to kind of optimize the energy transfer. For me, I think I need a frame that's not going to break, it's not going to bend, it's going to stand up to like the abuse that people throw at the frames. But I also think about weight. So I do try to weight optimize. We do extensive real world testing. Like usually I don't release a frame until we've skated it at least 6 months. Most of the designs to date have been 8 to 12 months of usually iterating on the design and testing it in the real world. Like I think the only frame I've just made and released was the Endless 90 ES because it's essentially just a slightly longer 90. But everything else is iterated multiple times. Like the Endless 90 frame, that's on Rev E. So
Okay. And that's revision A, B, C, D, E. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, I start with
Okay.
dash. No change. Then A,
Okay.
B, C, D, E. So that's 5 revisions.
Okay. All right. Rev E. Okay. I mean, again, as a software engineer, I'm used to what's called semantic versioning. So it would be 1.2.1 or something like that. But okay. Okay. So, I mean, that was one of my questions actually is what do you ever have designs that don't make it? Or have you had a design where you're like, this is a bad idea? Like I thought it would work, or this isn't up to snuff?
Yeah, there's been at least 5 designs that didn't make it. Two were iterations of something that is going to come out.
Okay.
One was something I did back in 2020 that other brands now make. I just decided at the time it was a little too niche and I just didn't want to do it. I was more interested in pursuing other things. But a couple people have it out in the world. I gave all the prototypes away. But one thing I'll tell you about is maybe next time we do this, I'll show you some of these rejected concepts. When developing the arc frame, we had a concept that was, started the arc end of 2021, and then had the first prototypes we were skating in like January of 22. And it was 90s on the outside, like normally the final version has got, that's an eight. Whoops, that's an 80. Then there's
Right.
376s, or you can do an 84. I had a version that was, screen's all backwards, 90 on the end with 76s in the
Okay.
middle. And then we also made one that was 90s and 72s. And I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to be like, oh, you should put that out. I would skate that. But you know
Right.
what? It didn't feel good. It just felt, it felt like a really short tri-skate with training wheels, because
Okay.
the step between the step going from the center pivots, the wheels 2, 3, and 4 to the outer wheels was such a big deviation, so you'd have
Mhm.
this like 77 millimeter wheel spacing between the 76s, but then it would jump to this, plus 15%, 20%
Mhm.
wheel spacing. And it just made that rocker feel like it was gonna go like, you know.
Sure. Sure.
And I just didn't like that. I didn't want a slalom skate with an extra pivot with big training wheels. So
Okay.
yeah. So, and for arc, yeah, and I thought about the wheels too. Like, you need to be able to have a cohesive set of wheels with all the same profile. And I didn't want people to get frustrated with the wheel configuration. I wanted it to be wheels that they could get anywhere in the
Sure.
world. So 80s, 84s, 76s are fairly ubiquitous, and you can get them in sets that have all the same profile.
Okay. It's funny. It's funny you say that, because there was recently, I think it was in the Wizards skating subreddit. Um, Someone was like, how come you can't get an 81, 82, 83, 80? Why not just rocker wheel sizes? And in my head, I was like, that sounds like a logistical nightmare for consumers buying the wheels, as well as companies who have to make them and stock them and know what sizes. And it's like, it
Yeah.
would solve the rockering problem in a more granular way, but rockered frames seem like a situation that fits, the industry a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, slalom frames originally were all flat, and people just used to choose different wheel sizes. I think that's how,
Sure.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how we wound up with the 2 millimeter banana rockers. People would stick 76s on the outside of their 80s. So
Probably.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think it just was a matter, it just, someone realized like, hey, instead of having different wheels on our frame, why don't we just put the wheels where we want them? And I think that was the birth of the rockered frame.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Like, there's so much experimentation happening right now in inline skating, like frame development. And I say experimentation only assuming that some of them are probably good and some of them are bad, as someone who's only skated, a limited subsection of them. But back to two things you were just talking about, the performance driven stuff, and also the arc, because again, for the folks watching, I became a fan of the endless frames through a few times. Like the endless 90 just felt amazing. The endless 100 felt good. It's not my personal favorite frame. And then the tri-skate on the 90 was kind of an eye opener, because I was against the idea at first for no good reason. And then the arc was like really something that kind of hit me in the face personally, because I had NN Dragons, which are a 5x80, it's a flatland wizard style frame, just like the arc. And I've had fun on every rollerblade. Like, I'll have fun on any frame you put wheels on, like personally. Like, I just love skating. But it was one of the, when I tried the arc, it was one of those things where it was like, I didn't know how much better this could get, a 5-wheel frame. Because I think 5-wheel frames often are like, well, that's my flatland frame. I'm not gonna go down hills. I'm not gonna urban skate. Even though, like, especially with smaller wheels, like a long wheelbase and a low ride height is awesome for urban skating, for like jumping, because you get that stability and you're connected to the ground. So it's interesting to hear like how the arc kind of got developed, because I can tell you from experience, it was like a marked difference when I skate the NN Dragons. And I'm not putting down the NN Dragons or anything, but for me personally, I skated the arc and I was like, how come this feels like I don't want to take it off? And when I say I don't want to take it off, again, for those who aren't familiar with my channel, my style's probably the closest to like Bill Stobbard. Like my greatest skating skill is going fast. Like my greatest skating skill is probably just my fitness. I just go fast a lot. But like that's to say I'm not much of a wizard skater, but I like dabble and I want to get better at that. But the really cool thing about the arc for me is that I can practice wizard skating and then not want to take the arc off my boots and put my 4x90s or my 4x100s on to go have like actual urban skating fun.
Yeah.
So somehow like that arc managed to be a fun frame to skate and actually pretty fast. Like I haven't measured scientifically a speed difference or anything, and probably people theory craft around that, but it just feels
It's
great. Like,
yeah. No, it's definitely faster by design. So I felt this, like one of the, drivers for me for that design was I wanted to make a 5-wheel frame that, like you were saying, wasn't just only for flatland skating. I didn't want it to be the frame you put in the trunk of your car and then drove to the skating spot and then put on. I wanted it to be the frame you just skated in, and then if you wanted to do swivelly tricks, you can do them. And so I realized in order to achieve that, I was going to have to do certain things with the performance of the design. And one of those things was figuring out the wheel configuration to increase the speed. And so part of that comes from putting bigger wheels in the front and the back. Yes, the bigger footprint does give you, or the bigger diameter does give you a bigger footprint for if you want to do like heel and toe presses, it makes it a little easier. But it also does increase the overall speed. And what's interesting about the 76s and the 84s is, let's see if I have this here. Do I have a 90 millimeter wheel? Here's an 84, and this is a hydrogen. Notice, I don't know if you can see this here. Notice the amount of urethane versus hub. The 84 millimeter undercovers actually use the exact same hub as the 90. So this has what I'll call like a small tire, and this is like a fat tire.
Right.
So fat tires are slow because the urethane squishes.
Right.
And not only are they slow, but they're heavy. Believe it or not, this 80 millimeter, I can't get this in the screen. The 80 millimeter wheel weighs more than this 84 millimeter wheel.
Sure.
And so when you've got a 5x80 frame, like you were citing your NN Dragon, it uses 5x80. Part of the reason it's slow is because it's using fat tire 80 millimeter wheels.
Okay.
You might actually go about the same speed if you put on our new 76 millimeter wheels, which have a pretty large core relative to the size of the wheel. And so with ARC, it was, I really wanted to optimize the wheels. So like with going back to the hydrogen, a hydrogen 76 millimeter wheel uses the exact same core as the 80. So again, smaller tire, less wheel squish, less wheel flex, you're going to get more speed. The other thing that really drove the speed a lot was, let's see here, let me grab I have another arc set up on the ground here. Let's grab this. Actually, I should probably not grab it so I don't unplug myself. But the structural design of the frame is super rigid and stiff, especially at the base. And if like because you have one, I did things that other people don't do with their frame designs. And it was all based on the way I would design brackets for spacecraft.
Sure.
Like pieces of structure that would mount electronic boxes or thrusters or whatever. I just did what I would have done on the spacecraft, but I did it on ARC. And so it's incredibly rigid, but it's, it's all about putting the weight in the right place. Just throwing mass at something, yes, like a big brick will be stiff and rigid, but it's heavy. And
Right.
most people don't skate better on heavier frames. Like speed skaters don't use heavy frames for a reason. You can
Sure.
accelerate a lighter frame. You can always accelerate faster, which means you can do quicker stop starts, changes of direction, swing your foot from here to there, um, you know, do whatever edge change you want to do. So all those features of the structural design made for a really rigid platform that ultimately flexes less when you go on an edge or you go to do your stride. And because the whole frame bolted, in bolted joint with the boot is flexing less, the
Right.
frame's flexing less, so therefore you're putting less torsion into the axle, into the bearings. If you can imagine, you got a frame like this,
Right.
and if the two sidewalls kind of do this relative to one another, then
The axle's not going through
the axle's
through
going
the
through
bearing.
the bearing like this. And so
Mhm.
anytime, you take your axle, and imagine me
Sure. Sure.
pulling down on one side, it's putting a
Creates friction.
it's putting a
Yeah.
torsional load into the bearing race. And so it just causes the balls inside the bearing to kind of grind. And so you get frictional losses. And so
Yeah.
when everything is really rigid and stays parallel and square, then the wheels and the bearings can do its job. And so that all translates into more speed, more responsiveness. And so, yeah, it's not surprising that you found it to be a fast frame. We felt like it was as fast as 4x90 when you're using the 84s.
I, I would say that's about right. And again, I don't have a scientific way of measuring that, but again, I'm not a speed skater. I'm not super skilled or anything, but I really do. I skate it with a high intensity. I'm never going slow when I'm skating, and I feel that. It's the reason I like a carbon slalom boot and the power transfer you get at. Like when I push my foot down and push, I want to feel a reward for my
Yeah.
effort of pushing in. You know what I mean? And I don't want it to work against me. It's like using a high rebound reel versus I've got these Flying Eagle skates I'm reviewing, and the stock wheels on those are just dead. There's no bounce to
Yeah.
them. There's no rebound. And I'm angry because I'm I could go so much faster if you would just give me a little pushback every time I push. And even in my overview video of the arc, there's a section where I don't call it out specifically, but I was mentioning I was doing a bunch of crossovers uphill, and that feels a lot better on that stiff, rigid, that arc frame. And that's an example of where I don't feel I use the term soft, I think, when I referred to the NN Dragons. And that's not to mean they're wobbling or bending
Well,
or
they are,
anything.
though. I mean,
Well, sure.
all skate frames bend, but you want them to bend in a controlled way, under certain conditions, and not bend under other conditions. And
Sure.
I call them wet noodle frames. It's you're just skating on this thing that's like this. It's like what you put in is not what comes out. And there's a lot of frames on the market that are wet noodles, unfortunately. And
Right.
but it's hard to it's hard to appreciate or understand that until you experience something that performs at a higher level. And I think that's what you experienced when you got your arcs.
It was it was kind of transformational for me, and no offense, really sold me on Endless. And the fact, and I had read your website and I knew you were an engineer and stuff, but that was when I was these frames feel like they were designed by an engineer who also skates. They just feel that way. And I think, and again, I'm not a frame manufacturer, designer, or a mechanical engineer or anything, but it seems like there's a lot of, and when I said earlier, there's like a lot of experimentation going on with frames. I do like, it does seem like, I think maybe a good analogy, I think I've spoken with you about this before. A good analogy is like a TV, where I think a lot of people look at frames and they look at two things. They look at how long it is, or I guess they just like how many wheels and what are their sizes.
Yeah.
And that's all they really look at. And it's like looking at a TV and saying, well, there's a diagonal inch meter, like it tells you how long it is, or measurement. And then there's like a resolution. So it's like, I have an 80-inch 4K TV. It's like, all right, well, what version are the HDMI ports on it? And what's like the color saturation, and like, what's the refresh rate, and all these other things that make the difference between, a quote unquote good TV and a bad TV. And this is one of the other reasons I wanted to have you on here, just for the folks watching. Like, I was having conversations like this with Brad in like emails, and I was like, other people should be hearing you talk, like nerd out about the science behind these frames and the engineering that goes behind them. Because I think it's important. And I think it's one of the things, at least from my perspective, that seems to kind of differentiate what you're doing with your frames from some of the other frame companies.
Yeah. I mean, I think, designing a frame that looks a certain way is one thing. Putting a certain combination of wheels in a certain place is definitely another level of design, but I try and take it further, and and really try and, like I said, do a systems engineering design process, top down design, where I'm trying to solve an actual problem and not just present a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, yeah, a concept. It doesn't just have to be conceptual. Like you want it to be actual, have a purpose, right?
Yeah. Like we could, like I could make a frame that's 125, 110, 125, but why? Sure, it'll look
right.
It'll look different, but what problem does it solve? What application is that for?
Sure.
So
sure.
It's great if people want to throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks. I'm all for it, but that's not my process.
Sure. I mean, that's part of the engineering spirit, right? And like just the creative, inventor spirit, where you just try and figure things out. But yeah, I'm sure there's a more controlled way to go about it too. I'm doing a terrible job of looking at chat. Like I said,
yeah,
I'm not trained as a streamer. I'm not a classically trained streamer. So let's take a brief moment and go through some of these, because hang on. There's one question I had on my list that I wanted to ask you that Kevin Norris has asked here. How'd the conversation with Power Slide go when you decided to make a Trinity mount frame? I think Endless was the first to do a licensed Trinity mount. Yeah. What was that like? And were you the first? I think you might have been.
Yeah, I was the first. So I had interest in doing it, and I had been talking to Ricardo Lino about it, and he was like, I'll make you an introduction to Matthias. And he's like, I think they'd be open to it. And so Ricardo introduced me, and then Matthias and I started talking, and I was like, hey, can I license Trinity and make an official Trinity frame? I'd like to do it. And what was funny was that they had a whole licensing, I don't want to call it a price sheet, but they had put some thought into like their licensing program for, how's it going to work with a Trinity boot versus a frame versus some other product. But I don't think they had ever thought to really approach other skate brands to try and like pitch this as something that other brands could do. Or maybe they had, and other brands were just like, no, we don't want to make products for your ecosystem. But I was, I mean, I think Endless, in the 90s and 2000s, there was lots of, non-big manufacturer skate companies that, little companies that made aggressive products, whether they were wheels or grind plates or what have you. But I don't think there'd ever been like a free skate, urban skating, recreational aftermarket skate parts company like Endless before. And so yeah, anyway, they were very receptive, and it was, good process. They provided me with, design info on like, I got all the boot, like the boot profiles. So with Trinity, some people ask like, hey, how come there's this gap on my power slide neck skate? It's because I have to design my Trinity frame. Here's a Trinity frame. This is my custom Evo with the 90 LR. I have to design every Trinity frame to fit every power slide boot. And so using the
Right.
boot, so basically they have like worst on worst boot profiles that allow me
Okay.
to, so some engineer designer at Powerslide figured out like, hey, on a size 36 boot, we've got this close clearance point here, but on a size 48 boot, that close clearance point is over here. And they kind of made like composite profiles. And so I was able to work out clearances to that. And then like after I had the designs done, one of their engineers, I asked them to check a couple things on specific boots. I was really interested in what the clearances were like on the Hardcore Evo and the Next. So yeah, it's very collaborative, iterative process. They were great to work with. Everyone at Powerslide is just super cool and easygoing, and just they're good people. So I really actually enjoyed working with them.
Awesome. That's good to hear. There's for those of you watching, if you're not familiar with Jan Welch's channel, he has an interview with Matthias. That was pretty interesting. I recommend you go out, check out Jan Welch and his interview with Matthias over at Powerslide. Pull this Martz again. I think in mainstream rollerblading, kind of just echoing what you're saying, is lacking that high-end design expertise like speed skating, skiing, hockey, etc.
I don't know if it's lack of money. I just think this is going to sound terrible. I just don't think, I don't want to say this. I think the bigger brands use industrial designers to design these parts. And again, I just don't think they kind of probably have best practices. Like I think we can all agree, if you made your frame walls 1/4 of an inch thick, nobody's going to break that,
Right.
And so like with Rollerblade, I've noticed across all their frames, they have standard thicknesses for frame walls and bridges and stuff like that. And they've probably just learned over the years, like, hey, this doesn't break. We don't get complaints when we make a frame like this. And I think there's no motivation to like tweak the performance. It's just more about how do we make it light, make it so it doesn't break for 99.9% of the people. Unfortunately, I have seen some rollerblade frames that have broken, when they're put under like really heavy punishing skating, but that's not how most people are skating.
And I do think there's a subsection of skaters. Like there are people who don't necessarily care. I'm one of those people who's just like obsessed with, I want the tightest fit. I want the best performance. I want the best power transfer. Like I deal with these urban or these FRSLs with no shock absorption because they just perform better, and like I want a skate to be painful when I'm breaking it in, because that means it's probably the right size and it's going to be nice and snug afterwards. So I think there are people out there that want a little more precision out of it. And I'm not some world-class skater, right? And I'm not a speed skater, but I 100% feel the difference when I'm like when my heart rate is high and I'm going up a hill, and how much I'm getting out of the performance of my skates as I'm striding and sprinting and stuff. Because I skate hard, and I feel that 100%. So there are people like me out there.
Yeah, I think the industry up until the last few years kind of overlooked two customers. The customer that wants to spend a lot of money on a high-end skate setup. Like you still don't see 600. There's not a lot of $600 plastic shell boots, but that's what I'm advocating. That's what I'm basically selling and putting together for customers, right? And so I think people, the industry has overlooked the high-end customer for a long time. Maybe it didn't exist until recently because like it's people like my age and your age that have, we needed to grow up and get old enough and get high-paying engineering jobs. But The other thing that was overlooked is, I totally forgot my train of thought. What were you just saying?
So I was talking about there are people out there that really want
Oh, the
performance
performance. Yeah.
and yeah.
I think the industry is starting to wake up to the fact that there's like a very enthusiastic, we'll just call it urban skater, who demands a certain level of performance that the standard offerings don't quite give them. And I think this is a new thing. And we're starting to see, like a brand like Icon, I think is catering to that customer, as am I. Wizard Skating, obviously, with their premium products. I feel like FR of all the brands probably makes the best stock frames. Like all their designs are just super solid and rigid.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And it,
but yeah,
sorry,
but
go
the
ahead.
stuff, like if you buy, but the average rec skate is like, rollerblade stuff is good, but um, but yeah, just to get you're right, to get like that highest level of performance, I think that's something new that hasn't been there.
Yeah. And maybe I've spoiled it for myself because I got back into skating. I had hockey skates that were in my basement for like over a decade, and that's all I had. Then I got the FR1 Intuition. And so I was in like arguably one of the best plastic shell urban skates on the market, right? Like FR1 and Twister are probably, I guess, maybe the Power Slide next. Yeah, exactly. And then I went to the FRSL, which is this guy right here.
Yeah.
Which is kind of FR's. You got the endless
I've
wheels
got
on here.
my micro here.
Yes, that's like basically the same thing as the FRSL. And then, like I said, I'm reviewing these Flying Eagle F5S Eclipse. These guys, there's a review coming, but I've been skating them. And that's not a bad skate, especially for the money, but I feel the difference. And I'm just like, all I want to skate is the best skates you can have. And that's why, like, when I was
Oh yeah.
looking for a carbon skate, I was like, what is the best skate that FR makes? And that's the one I bought. And I can tell you there's a difference. There is a difference. I feel it. And I am not a professional skater. That's actually one of the things I love, like about like if you consume a bunch of content with like Leon Basson and the Wizard Skate, is like whether you like their setups or not. I absolutely love like the passion and care, the meticulous care that goes into that skate being the way he wants it to be.
Oh yeah.
Right. And I don't want to speak for Leon, right? But like it seems like he's like, I'm doing a very specific thing on skates, and
Yeah.
I am designing the best performing version of the thing I want to do on skates that's possible. And I think that's such an awesome thing about that brand, and why there are very few people who buy a Wizard skate that are like, yeah, I sold it. It's junk. I've never tried it. And those are usually like Seba boots. And I know they have their own Seba, like official Wizard skate and liner and everything. But I love it. It's a similar level of like care and attention to detail and
Yeah.
like
Attention to detail.
obsessiveness over
Yeah.
like, well, yeah.
There's a vision there. Yeah.
Yes.
He,
And it's
he
like, well,
executed a vision. Yeah.
right. And it's like, I don't want it to be good. I want it to be as good as it possibly can. And
Yeah.
that is the attitude that makes like amazing products.
There's a
Here. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you were gonna pop up another question.
Yeah. If you had something to say, go for it.
Somebody was asking, I saw in the comments about top. I guess we can just go in order. We'll get to it. Let's just go
Yeah.
down.
Sorry. Yeah. Here's one. Would you consider making UFS aggressive style frames? I know you make UFS frames like the 90s.
Yeah. Not right now. I'm not an aggressive skater. I don't pretend to be. I like to solve, like I was saying, I like to solve problems. I don't know if I understand all the problems in aggressive
Right.
skating. And so I don't want to make stuff just to like tick boxes and have like a big catalog of products. I want to just, pursue the things I'm personally excited about. One thing I'm going to tell you I am going to make is, and I probably told you this, Jim, I'm making myself a signature frame.
Nice. The Brad. Wow, that's awesome. Congrats on the sponsorship from Endless and getting a pro model.
Yeah, right.
That's amazing. So when's that coming out?
I don't know. I gotta finish designing
Okay. All right. Well, after this call, get back on CAD and keep
it.
working at it, please. That's actually that's one thing I wanted to bring up is like the wizard thing, because one of the things I see too is like I feel like any frame that's greater than 80 millimeters and has like a rocker, especially a slight rocker, is denoted as a wizard frame, and that includes, at least from my side, from the consumer side, like people will refer to endless frames as wizard frames. And I mean, how do you feel about that? Are you making wizard frames? Because like I'm saying this in response to you saying like I'm not an aggressive skater, I'm not going to pretend to
Yeah.
be one. I'm not going to make frames just because people might buy them. So like,
Yeah. No.
is Endless a wizard frame company, or
No.
or what?
Well, I would say the arc frame is definitely, this is my offering for people that want a wizard skate. This is what I feel is superior to a 5x76 or 5x80 setup. I
Okay.
I am not a wizard skater. I don't identify personally as, like that's not my identity. Um, yeah, Endless was never meant to make a 165 version of a wizard frame. That wasn't the goal. I mean, as we touched on earlier, the goal was for me to solve two problems like that I had personally for me and my friends, which was I want a four-wheel setup that's 4x90, and I want a medium length 3x110 setup that's not going to bend when I trip on a curb. Like that
Sure.
so really I was making frames for me and my fellow beginner and intermediate skaters, all of whom were definitely not wizard skaters. I was just trying to offer a better, more versatile skating experience.
Sure. Sure. I mean, and I think that's another thing is like, even like going back to like the NR90 or something, which it seems like most wizard skaters are skating 5-wheel frames these days. I could be totally wrong about that as well.
Yeah.
I'm not a wizard skater, so don't get angry if that's incorrect. But it makes sense, right? It seems like it's more appropriate for that kind of flatland style.
Yeah.
But whether you're skating a 4x90 frame to wizard skate or free skate, it's still just a great length for skating, So I think that's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always seen Endless as like a free ride, free skate, urban like kind of centric
Yeah.
frame company. At least that's the way I perceive it.
I mean, when I launched the website, I mean, this was the boot and this was the frame that you see on all the photos. Like this is like in my little avatar, or the little, profile pic on my Instagram page.
Right.
And so like, to me, this was my prototype the reference setup, whereas for wizard skaters, it's this boot with this liner,
Yeah.
So I think this is some people are going to disagree, but I don't think this is the best free skate boot that you can get. I think for general skating and versatility, it's this boot.
Okay.
Or the Twister XT, which I also really like.
Yeah. I would mostly tend to agree with that. Like I'll do a video someday about the FRSL. I skate these, but I don't think they're for everyone. I don't think it's the best all around. Again, especially because like there's no shock absorption in these things, but I still love them actually. And Alexei Morita, who is an amazing skater, is actually pretty pumped he's here.
I've got some of those.
I use junk wheels on my Wizard PR76.
They're good. Yeah, those are great.
These are the junk free. These are the junk cross FR. The biggest bummer about my FRSL that came with these wheels, I don't skate 4x80 much, and these are like some of the best wheels I have, but I just don't skate 80 millimeter frames very often.
Yeah, if people like those wheels, you should also check out the MPC Rink Rat, the Trickster. Okay. They come in that like this color, this fluorescent yellow color. It's the same wheel.
I think I've seen that.
Just a different color. So, but yeah, I would consider those. It's that junk freestyle wheel. It's the hockey formula. and so it's like a lower rebound than what they have on their, their speed, like the Black Magics.
Okay.
So it's a little more dead and not as fast, but better for quick stops and starts as you would want for hockey.
Here's the question: Does this mean a 2-point mounted frame is inherently bad, or can the screws get tight enough that the forces from leaning laterally are large enough that it won't affect the frame position?
Yeah, structurally, it's it's kind of a bad mount. Like what's a good example?
Aren't large enough, sure.
Well, you just 2 points isn't really enough to fix something, right? So because what you have on every frame, like we basically try and like torque the frame bolts enough so that way when you go on, let's see if I can get this aligned with my screen here. When you go on an edge, sorry, I'm good. Sorry,
Right.
guys, I'm doing a terrible job. What ends up happening is this frame actually it doesn't stay like this relative to your boot. It bends, like the bolt bends at this interface because there's nothing actually. It's bad for me to use Trinity. Trinity solves that problem because it's 3-point mount, right?
Sure.
So when I that's why Trinity feels like really stable and you get good power transfer, is because when you go on that edge, you've got another mounting point kind of holding everything in place. But yeah, on the 2.165 mount, that you do get flex. So going back to, making a frame that looks cool versus engineering a frame that performs well. I've done things like on the ARC frame and the UFS frame that enhance that bolted interface. So
okay,
you can feel it like I don't want to give away my secrets and I don't want to teach people how to be, mechanical designers, but not everybody is designing good bolted joints.
It's something I think about all the time, honestly. Every time I put my frames back on my skates, or even just thinking about like when I'm sliding, like when I'm going to like a high-speed magic slide or something, or even just a soul slide or just any kind of slide, I'm always like, there's just 2 bolts under here. And the only thing that's holding them on is like the torque that I've given to, those 2 screws.
Yeah.
Like
what is
stopping this frame from moving a little bit? It's really like that's tight enough of a bond just by screwing it in that like torquing it down, it just stays, I guess.
I'll give everybody this bit of advice. Always use a washer with your frame bolts.
Okay. All right. I think I have washers on mine, but I'll have to check now.
Yeah.
There's your pro tip. Oh, sure. DJ Drift King. Today's actually my 1-year blade anniversary, and it looks like they they just left. But thank you so much for coming. Again, I apologize. I feel like I'm doing a wretched job of keeping up with chat. I'm actually looking through to see if there's any more questions.
Jose mentions the sound of the frames.
Yeah, right here. No one talks about the sound of the frames, how they could make this particular airplane sound when you use it. Is that something? So like, I actually noticed that about the ARCs. The ARCs sound better to me than the 90s.
They all have a different sound, and it has to do with a couple things. Just the overall size of the channel. You're basically, because the frames have mostly solid sidewalls, you're creating a channel, and the air is whipping through that channel, and the frame itself has like a resonant frequency. And so for those of you guys that own ARC frames, if you kind of like hold it by one finger, like just let it dangle on the bridge, if you biff or flick the frame, it'll ring like a tuning fork. It's very high pitched because it's a very stiff, rigid structure. So the air kind of whipping through this channel, interacting with it, it sets up like it vibrates through there, and then that kind of interacts with the stiffness of the frame, and so you get a pitch. So ARCs have a very high pitch. It almost sounds like a whistle, whereas like the Endless 90s are more of a whoosh. And what's interesting is on the 110s, because they have internal bridges, the bridges break up the airflow, and these sound
Okay.
quieter. These end up sounding quieter. So, and the UFS too, because it's got the bridge in the center.
Sure.
Can't do
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
But yeah, they all have a sound. So any solid frame without a bunch of cutouts is going to make some kind of sound, but it's always going to be, you won't hear it as obviously if the frame is a wet noodle. So like if you have a lower resonant frequency, and that happens if your frame is either has a lot of mass, it's heavy, or it's structurally not very stiff.
Right.
Those frames will have a lower pitch.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the Endless, because it's lightweight and it's stiff, it's going to be a higher pitch.
It was one of the things I noticed and love about the Arc is like, I don't know what it is about those, but I like the way they sound the best out of the Endless frames I own for sure. Here's kind of, again, an older comment. I also think inline skating still seen more as just a fun hobby thing people do every now and then, and true enthusiasts aren't as common. I mean, I think that's true of everything, right?
Yeah.
I feel like in inline skating, I mean, I have a YouTube channel about inline skating, so I think I'm in a category that's above just a general, skater. But yeah, I guess that's probably true of anything. The cool thing about inline skating, though, is just kind of how small and niche it is. I mean, I guess that's not good in some ways too. Like, I would love a bigger industry. I would love more companies, more products, etc. But it is kind of cool how small it is, and how many people know each other,
Yeah.
Here we go. Here's Kevin. Yeah, I wanted to ask a similar question. So thank you, chat, for like poaching half the questions I had for Brad.
Yeah. All right.
What are your top 3 inline skate products out there not made by Endless?
Sonic skate tool.
Definitely.
I always bring this with me when I skate. I have the orange one too, which has got the
mine's somewhere.
The bigger hex for FR and Seba frame bolts. FR1, and then Intuition liner.
Okay.
Man, if I had, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, what matters most in a setup? Like, is it the liner? Is it the shell? Is it the frame? Is it the wheels? I'm gonna have to go with liner and wheels. I think because the liner is like your comfort, right? Mm-hmm. And your like the fit performance. And if that's not right, you're not going to be enjoying yourself. And then apart from that, like, the skating experience is the wheels. Like, always pony up the money and buy the good wheels. Like, if you're one of those people that buys the crappy, $20 for a set of 4, stop. Just save up the extra money, get the $35 wheels, the $40 wheels, like, get some of our new MPC wheels. Like, these are probably the best thing most people will ever skate on 110.
I can tell you, I don't have my 110s, but yes, I agree. I've got those MPCs that I'm still I'll have like a review up at some point of those MPC, the Endless ones. But I couldn't agree more about the wheels. It's like, everybody's budget is different, right? And everybody wants to spend their money differently. And I know not everyone can afford, the best wheels or whatever, but you don't even have to get the best. Like, even like relative, you don't have to. Yes, because it just, and again, it's Reddit. So, like, I'm not putting down Reddit, but like, it's Reddit. Everybody knows what Reddit is. But like, I saw a conversation recently where they were talking about cheap wheels specifically. And there was like, some people were like, well, I can't spend, my boots were $120. I can't put $80 wheels on them. And it's you're missing out on like what will change your experience drastically. Like, get good wheels. And then there's another sentiment where it's like, well, I can't justify a wheel that costs twice the price unless it lasts twice as long. And again, it's like, if you're really constrained by budget, then you have to do what you do. But listen to me, listen to Brad. If you can afford better wheels, just treat yourself and get the better wheels, because they really make a huge difference for sure.
I will say
Um,
that, what I decided to do with our wheels is, because I know people can't always afford spending a lot of money on wheels, is I've decided for the endless wheels that we're going to sell going forward, I'm going to price them lower than they should be priced, just so people can experience what a good wheel should be. So when you see my wheels on Inline Warehouse and they look inexpensive compared to whatever's trendy, just know that they're not inexpensive because they're cheap wheels. They're inexpensive because I don't care about making money off them, and I just want people to skate really good stuff.
I can say that the MPC, the 110s, they're not your latest wheel anymore. I guess you just came out with those 68 and 76 millimeter wheels.
Yeah.
But your second most recent wheel that you came out with, the MPC 110s, you were just holding. When Brad had sent me those, and it came through as like an order, and the price was like discounted right for the review, and I was like, oh, this must be a pre-product, because I got them a few days before they were up on the site or whatever, and I was like, these must be, I'm assuming this price will go up once they go live, and it didn't, and I was like, oh, okay. And I remember talking with you privately, and you were saying the same thing. You were like, I just want people to know what good wheels are like.
Yeah,
So
people
thank you for that.
probably want me to sell this for $18 a wheel, but I just can't do that to you guys.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Can Brad talk about the effect of frame being shifted forward or back compared to the boot? What are the performance impacts of like having the normal endless frame on Twister XT? I'm assuming they're referring to like something that's slightly rear biased, like the
Yeah.
Adapt I brought up earlier. I know they don't center the same, and I
Yeah.
know that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you kind of started designing your frames around like the FR, because I think you were telling me there's no real standard for the alignment. It's just that it has to be 165 millimeters apart, and whatever that is, 10 or 11 high for the heel.
Yeah, that's right. So on a, when you talk about a UFS frame, the mounting bolts are symmetric about the center of the frame, which is assumed to be in the center of the boot. But for 165, it's like the center point is like the distance from the center of the frame to the front mount is different than it is to the rear mount.
Right.
And so there's not really a standard. So I had to pick a boot that I wanted to make perfect. And for me, that boot was the obvious choice at the time, which was the FR1. And so our frames will, you can always tell that you've got your frame on the FR because like the edges of the frame will line up with the edges of the features of the boot. It changes a little bit from size to size. Like I think I designed to make everything line up on a size 42.
Right.
But it's mostly in line. But yeah, if going back to the question, if your frames, it's not wrong to skate with your frames shifted forward or back. It's just going to change how you experience the skate and like how it affects your performance. If the skate, so rollerblade historically has always mounted its frame slightly forward. And I almost wonder if that's related to hockey or skiing, maybe. Aren't skis like shorter in the back than they are in the front?
I don't know.
But for whatever reason,
I've skied a dozen times in my life.
Like when you look at a lot of the skates from the 90s, they all had the frame shifted forward. You get more toe push. You have less stability, like in the back of the boot, but you get like more. Like you can think when you're pushing on your stride, you're always finishing that stride on your toe, and so like when you have more frame sticking out, you get more push.
It's a longer lever, I guess.
Yeah. So I think that's why rollerblade has always done that. If you've got a frame that's shifted back, which seems to be the way that Adapt likes to mount their frames, you get more maneuverability at the toe and more stability in the back. So it's a good way if you have a small foot in a long frame. It's an easy way to make your frame feel shorter. I just like the way things feel when they're centered or slightly shifted back.
I'm exactly the same. I want it centered if I can get it that way, but if I have to go in a direction, I'll go back. And that's
Yeah.
mostly, yeah. Like I think that's mostly for, and I think you can get
This
more
one,
push
yeah, this one's
if it's,
shifted back.
yeah.
This one's
It's
pointing
funny.
towards.
Every time I'm out a frame here, I'll hold up my SLs again. This is hard. I feel like they're a little rear biased a little bit, but I prefer it that way mostly because of jumps. And I don't do a ton of jumping, but I feel like I'm just a little bit safer if I'm less likely for this thing to slip out for landing jumps. And I would assume the shorter lever up in the front is probably better for like a quick acceleration. You won't get as much power out of each stride, but it's easier to make rapid successive strides.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's probably one of the reasons hockey skates are also high-low and kind of that
Yeah.
forward lean.
Yeah.
But
Good question.
yeah. There's so many. Thank you so much, chat, for showing up. I'm woefully behind. If you see anything you wanted to chat about, Brad, feel free.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking through right now.
Yeah.
Someone says slight rocker is just a great idea. Maybe the lack of that was holding back design in the past. I don't know if that was holding back design, but it was definitely like a really great, great innovation and clever idea from Leon from Wizard Skating. You know, I think a lot of us intuitively know that when our wheels are worn on a flat setup, it feels better and it's easier to carve. And so, you know, Leon had that good idea of kind of taking that worn in feeling and kind of making it a preset. Maybe that's in the same way that the slalom skaters did when they got tired of putting small wheels and big wheels. And so, yeah, I mean, I think for me personally that, you know, I was inspired to think about rocker not as a binary thing of 0 or 2 millimeter, but it can be on a spectrum. And so when I was developing the frames, you know, like I was thinking about that concept of rocker as a spectrum. And I started measuring the rockers on all my skates, like from all my flat setups, like how much were the wheels worn. And when I would especially get like, you know, I'd go skating and the wheels would be worn in just right, both on my 3 and 4 wheel setups, I'd be like, wow, these skates are feeling really great today. Let me go measure where the rocker's at. And I started keeping track of that. And that data ultimately became the balanced rocker for the 4 wheel setups and the enhanced flat setup. Enhanced flat, I first debuted that for a 3 wheel setup, but I've started using it on my 4 wheel setups as well. But yeah, so yeah, I was taking kind of a note of what those measurements were, and then flowing that into the designs. And so another point, maybe something people don't realize about endless frames is the rocker is not the same on all the frames.
Right.
It's different for every frame. And so it's unique to the geometry of that particular frame in terms of the wheel size and the wheelbase. And I think that's something that I do that's unique. I'm not sure that any other brand does that. I could be wrong. Maybe somebody knows, but I think a lot of other brands that are doing non-0 and 2 millimeter rockers I think they pick a number and it's the magic number, but there isn't a magic number. I found there's sweet spots based on the configuration.
And I think, yeah. And like, that's also always going to be like your first impression on the user too, of like that intended. I posted on Instagram, maybe it was yesterday. I was like, my favorite session on new wheels is the second session because they're worn enough to slide, but they haven't imposed their will on like the intended rocker of the frame yet. And it was like, I love brand new wheels because it's like, oh, I've got the rocker at its purest and the wheels have no impact on the rocker right now. And if you think about it too, like even if you're trying to simulate a naturally worn rocker, that's going to happen different on different sized frame or different size wheels and frames. Like your 4x100 may wear in naturally a little bit differently than they would on your 490. I mean, they have to, right? Like
it does. So it's silly for anybody to think like you can just take 1 millimeter and apply it to across a bunch of different designs. It's going to give you a different result and a different feel. And for me with Endless, I wanted there to be an endless feel that was consistent across all the frames. And so that meant, figuring out where those sweet spots were for different wheelbases and setups.
Yeah. It's interesting stuff to think about for sure. Let's see. Oh, DJ Drift King. No, I'm still here for now. Anyway, I'm probably behind, and they're gone. We'll get our I'll set a timer for 2 minutes. We'll check in on DJ Drift King 97. Let's see. Resonance like tuning fork. Some people are talking about heat molding.
Yeah. You can take your Twister XTs to a boot fitter. I actually need to do that myself. I will probably make a video about after I get that done, how I like the result.
Cool.
Let's see.
Oh, Sonic skate tool.
That's a really good point. So I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but on a Sonic skate tool,
that's why it's rounded, right?
Yeah, one of these ends has got a nice fillet in the corner here. Like there's this end, which is flat, this end that's also flat, but this end, has got a nice sloped shoulder. And what that is excellent for is when you go to put you align your wheel and your frame, you can see it here, how the spacer is a little off from the bearings.
Right.
This part of the tool will align everything. So, and then it'll be easier to insert your axle. I actually made a little video that I posted to Instagram about how to install axles.
Yeah.
Some guy gave me crap for it because apparently it's too basic, but I'll tell you what, so many people screw it up.
And it's funny too. Like that must be why that's rounded there. That must be
it's exactly what it is.
Purpose of it. Because if it's like that 90-degree angle, if it's flat, like sometimes I'll put the axle in and I'll jiggle the axle trying to get it in, and it's like, what? I should just use the tool.
If you don't have a good skate tool, you can actually use a wooden pencil.
Yeah, that works. I guess anything that's tapered that will like ease its way into centering the spacer within that.
And go through the frame and the bearings.
Yeah. That is a great tool, by the way, honestly. And I think I got mine because Bill Stoppard was
there's a reason
of it, but it gives the most amount, like those skate tools that come in every like box of skates are just like, you can twist them. They twist like a Twizzler, like a piece of candy, or like, it's just, every time I do it, I'm like, this thing, every time I loosen a bolt that's hard to loosen at all, I think I'm altering the integrity of this tool every time I like apply a certain amount of torque. And the Sonic tool never feels that way. It's just rock solid.
So fun fact, the owner of Sonic Sports and the designer of these tools is also an aerospace engineer.
There we go. So we just need nothing but aerospace engineers to designing skates.
Or at least he has experience in the aerospace industry as an engineer.
Sure. And I don't think people realize like how much, like people will bend a frame with their hands and be like, oh, it's stiff enough, I can bend it. It's like, well, your hands, do you know how weak your hands are compared to your entire body weight and the wheels rolling and like going off a curb at 30 miles an hour? You're not testing it by like squeezing it with your hands. Like it needs
drive your car over it maybe.
Right. Like if you can bend it with your hands,
then definitely don't skate that.
Right. Exactly.
No, there's some frames that like I've been able to, with one hand collapse like half of an inch. Right. And they felt like that when you skate them. You're like, I don't feel stable and confident on this setup. And that's why if you ever feel like you can't trust your skate, it's probably because the frame's a wet noodle.
And I mean that's another important thing I think, even for like beginners of like high quality equipment, is like there's a trust. It's yeah, you feel more competent and confident on something that just feels like it has structural integrity under your feet, because it's a little harrowing going down a hill at 25, 30 miles an hour and being like, well, I hope this axle doesn't back out, and I hope this frame bolt holds up, and I hope these frames don't bend. Shout out to Voodoo, regular commenter on the channel. Thank you so much for all the support. It's a great live stream. Big fan of re-rolling. Thank you so much. I think he also said, I think we all have the Sonic tool. I think so. I mean, it's a very good tool. It's a good tool. Let's see what else we have here. Game changer. Marks is talking about what a game changer intuition liners are.
Yeah, agreed.
Someone said hydrogen for the win. Hydrogen's very good wheels. I'm on my first set ever of Endless. You'll have to forgive me because I've always liked hydrogens a little more than UC blanks, and that's because they don't slip as much as a UC blank. And I forgot for the longest time that the Endless wheels are 85A, and I've been meaning to try them. And so for the past 2 years I haven't, but I've got a set on now, and I think I have 4 sessions in them so far. Very good. Let's see.
Someone asked, rain wheels. I've never tried a rain wheel. I don't know anything about them. I don't skate in the rain. That's my answer.
I don't either. I have to alter the way I skate too much. That's my biggest problem. It's like I just get frustrated by having to go slower and be more deliberate, that I'm just like, I feel like I'm not skating, and I don't want to do this. It has nothing to do with like rusting bearings out or like having to clean things. I feel like I'm going to kill myself skating in the rain.
Yeah,
I don't want to do that.
Right. The next question's good.
What's this one?
Yeah.
What's a good wheel below hydrogen price range?
I'm gonna put a disclaimer on my comments here. I'm an admitted wheel snob. I believe that nobody should skate anything less than hydrogen. But that said, I feel like the FR wheels are decent, like the FR urban speed wheels.
Okay.
But they might be the same price as hydrogen. So I'd prefer to skate a hydrogen over the FR wheels. I believe that the best wheels are made by the American urethane manufacturers. I have not yet skated any Asian or European made wheel that performs better than any of the American made wheels. So stuff, the hydrogens, the undercovers, the MPC, the junk, all feel superior to me than.
Yeah.
TLTF is another great American wheel manufacturer that specializes in racing wheels. They have some nice dual pour options. You guys have probably seen me post pictures with those, like they've got those solid like fluorescent yellow hubs.
Okay.
Yeah.
These aren't bad. These are American.
Beta makes a good wheel.
Yeah. And not very expensive. These are like hot, and I don't think they go any larger. Sorry, the camera's not. There we go. I don't think it's an 80 millimeter 85A. Their market is hockey wheels. I think they're pretty popular in the hockey side of things. Yeah, I don't think they go any bigger than 80, but those aren't very expensive, and they're not junk either.
Yeah. Street Invaders. I mean, we carry Street Invaders in our store. We have both hydrogen and Street Invaders in the Endless store. So I think those are, good options, but I don't know if they're cheaper than hydrogen.
I think these comments are, again, we're behind. I think these comments were in relation to you talking about, kind of pricing your wheels cheaper so folks could enjoy them. We got a big thank you in all caps there. Respect for that statement on wheels. Much success to you. Here's someone who does love the new 110 millimeter Endless wheels. It's 65 miles the first time I wore them. Oh man, I just did 40 and I was gassed afterwards. 65. That's awesome.
Everybody should go follow Alexia. Let's see if I have her. Maybe if she wants to share her Instagram, everybody should go follow her.
Sure. Put in chat and I'll throw it up there.
Yeah.
Here's someone March is saying, I might check out the NPCs. I would do it. I think it's like you said, I'm kind of still testing them out, but it's a very high quality wheel at a very good price, a very aggressive price. I think people should try the Endless 110s.
It's eye opening to skate these MPC wheels. I mean, they truly do feel like the next level of everything good. That whatever you like about your current wheels, just imagine it better, and that's this wheel.
Yeah. Any plans to bring the micro rocker for the tri-skate mode to the Endless 90s?
You know, I've thought about that. The enhanced flat. I think about it. I love skating 3x110 flat on my Endless 90 setup and Endless 90 ES. So like, I generally do things that please me first.
Sure.
But I do think about it.
Awesome. Any plan to make lowrider frames for 165? That's actually something I've thought about and other people have thought about, because I mean that's one of the criticisms. I mean, I think that's the right word, criticism of the. I think a lot of people, I still see people saying that are critical of the tri-skate, the dual setup, because they're like, oh, you're wasting so much space because you're trying to fit two setups in one, and the 110, these would have a lower ride height. So do you want to actually talk about that a little bit? Like
that's a myth. Like that, we have some articles on our help site about, you know, is the ride height compromised on the Endless 90 and Endless 100 because of the tri-skate setup? The answer is no. It just so happens with I wish I had brought a smaller skate so I could fit it on the screen easier. It just so happens with, let's see if I can do this right. The position of the front mounting bolt over here is such that it kind of sits on top of this second wheel. That's why I'm a big fan of 180 millimeter mounting on the 100s and the 110s, because it does allow me to push it a little bit in the crack and get the ride height a little little lower. But it works out, especially with the Endless 90, that I get the four-wheel setup as low as it can go, and the 3x110 setup just tucks in there just with like a couple millimeters to clear. So it's one of the lowest, if not the very lowest 3x110 setup you will find on the market on that Endless 90 frame. So and it's just a function of the boot shape with the raised heel. It just works in the favor of three-wheel setups.
Man, you're right. This is hard. It's like when they try to get you to draw in a mirror or something when you're a kid in school. So I think it's really easy to look at this and see all this space in here and just get upset that like it's too high, you know, but it's like, you have to remember the bolts for mounting and just the shape of the boot. Like you said, I think every time I look at a skate frame, I'm like, this should be lower. This could be lower. Right. And people want lower, lower center of gravity and all that stuff for better control, which is like true. That would be great. It's one of the things I like about like hockey skates, honestly, high-low hockey skates. Their support stinks, but you're so low to the ground in those things.
This is why 195 mounting was invented, and 180 is because it pushes that front mounting bolt like away from that second wheel. 4x90 is the absolute worst for ride height. It's like the most unoptimized because that second wheel just sits right under the head of the mounting bolt. Sure. And so I generally try and design for a millimeter clearance between my mounting bolt and the wheel.
Okay.
And you don't want to go like, nobody's life is going to change if they get an extra half a millimeter or even a millimeter. Like you're just really not going to notice it. If I told you I could get you 5 millimeters lower, yes, you'll notice that. But in general, nobody's going to notice half a millimeter or a millimeter. But that said, I do try and optimize. But you got to keep in mind, like your 80 millimeter wheel doesn't always come out 80 millimeters. Sometimes it comes out 81, like, especially when they're brand new with the mold line on the wheel. So we've all probably, put new wheels on our skate and like the wheels go like this because they're touching.
Yep.
Yeah,
I never
that's
have,
not a
but I've
frame
seen it.
problem, that's a wheel
Yeah.
problem. So. But
Right.
anyway,
Here's a quick one you could answer. Any other colorways on the way? I'd love a red endless. Oh, I never thought of red. I'll be honest. I think the ultraviolet's really cool looking, and I've like almost bought them a bunch of times.
oh yeah,
And they
look at
look
that.
different every time. I can tell it's just something that's affected by the light. And
It
I'd love to
totally
see it in
is.
person.
Yeah,
But
look at
I
that.
know,
It goes like gray to
right.
This is why I call it ultraviolet. It's wicked. And then here's the titanium gray. This one's awesome too.
I think they look great together, honestly. Like when you posted those on Instagram, I was like, I want a two-tone frame of ultraviolet and titanium gray. So are there any other colorways coming?
Yes, but I can't tell you what. I will say that I do have the same ultraviolet and titanium gray coming for Trinity. So
okay, awesome.
Those people will not be left out. And the white endless 90s will finally arrive on the boat.
White?
White.
Not silver, white?
White.
That sounds cool. I like that idea.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool. I'd be interested to see that. So that's still like the same anodized, but it's white?
No, it's a different coating. You can't anodize white. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Okay. This is our DJ Drift King 97 check-in. Appreciate you both doing this. That was at 10:41 though, and it's 10:56 Eastern time. Would love to know if there are any plans to release. There's a lot of people asking about Trinity stuff. Just Trinity frames, I guess, in general.
Okay, so I have a Trinity arc frame that is a prototype is being manufactured right now. Hopefully I'll have it in a few weeks. I'm going to test it. If everything's good, I got to check so when I get prototypes, not only do I skate them, but I get all my boots in all the different sizes I've collected, and I check clearances and see how it looks on the boot. One thing that I always try and do with my frame designs is design the frame such that it enhances the aesthetics of the whole skate setup. Like you can't make a skate frame such that when you put it on the boot, all you see is frame. It can't be a bottom heavy design. And I know other brands are doing that right now, and I just don't like that look. I feel like everything should be balanced. I don't skate my my Trinity boots enough, but I believe that the Trinity frames, they just look the best. Of all the frames I've designed, the Trinity ones look so good because they're just a lower profile because of the way that Trinity system is. And to me, it's like the proportions are right,
Yeah. Trinity, I get that question a lot on my channel. Like, hey, I'd love to get your thoughts on Trinity, this or that. And it's like, I just haven't had a reason to buy into that system yet. It's frustrating. It's so frustrating. Like, aggressive bladers are lucky that they have UFS. Like, whether that's an ideal mount from like technicals perspective or not, I don't know. And I'm not saying that because I think it's not. I'm just saying it out loud. But like a standard across all of them, all aggressive boots is such a wonderful thing. And now we've got, because like I think Quattro is like that takes that Trinity one step further, even right. And it's like there's 2 mounting points on both sides. Now you have 4. Like that seems amazing.
You want to know what boots have the best structural mounting, although the boots and the frames are usually not the best, is all the rec skates with just riveted frames.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's like the best for attaching, for the bolted joint. It's not riveted joint, but that interface is the best. But they don't put those on skates that are high end because you can't swap it out. But yeah, like a 4-point mount is, or an 8-point mount would be amazing.
Right.
It's probably overkill though. The 4-point is good.
Mark says, glad there's so many passionate skate engineers. Absolutely. Jose Rivas asked a question I'm going to save for just a few minutes because I think we're getting close to kind of wrapping up too. I feel like I feel like I could have this conversation with you for another 2 hours easily, but I want to be mindful of your time. I know you're busy. We need to speak. We need a frame speakeasy to hear about all the wet noodles.
I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you. The frames that I've skated that I like are my own FR frames and Wizard frames. Then
Okay.
you guys can take that and do what you want with it.
Okay. I mean, that's all I skated. Actually, I haven't skated the Wizard. Well, I've skated the NN.
I've skated lots of brands frames.
I'm sure
Yeah.
it goes with the job of being a frame manufacturer or designer.
Well, I mean, I'm like anybody else. Like, you know, I got way too many skate setups, and I like to try stuff.
Yeah, so do I. That's the only time I ever think about like monetizing my YouTube channel, is just like so I could just get more skates that I don't need. Like I just want more setups just to try them all. I want like I'm dying to try Trinity. Like I want a pair of hardcore Evos, but can't justify
They're nice
buying them just because. Especially when I have the FRSL, which is a very high-end carbon boot, you know.
Yeah, you wouldn't. I don't think you'd trade. I don't think you would ditch your SL for the Trinity.
How about this one? Can you, Brad, talk a little about the adjustable axles in terms of durability? I'm assuming you're referring to the ARC, the ARC rockerable axles. Looking at the images with the thin little internal screw just mentally feels bad.
There's no thin screw, but do I have? I don't have a screw. Here, I'll take one off of this skate.
I don't have mine nearby.
I actually spent a long time designing this hardware. So when I was designing the rockerable axles, I wanted to make them so that they were compatible with the FR rockerable axles. So that way, in case somebody in some part of the world, you know, lost one, broke one, damaged one, they could go to their local skate shop and probably get a replacement, because FR.
So you're talking about like that. Sorry, go ahead.
Just the dimensions of this.
That ovular. Yeah. Okay. I guess.
Yeah. All of it is very similar to the silver FR axles, like with the domed head. And so like, you know, I always try and think about like, what happens when Endless is gone and I'm gone or something. Like there's going to be somebody out there with one of my frames that's trying to skate it still. And so I didn't want to design something proprietary that is impossible to get and replace. But
interesting.
Yeah. So the bolts, I went through a few revisions. We tested the crap out of these. There's more meat on these than some other stuff I've seen. So I spec'd out a high strength, high carbon steel. They're designed to class 8.8 specs. It's like there's ISO specifications for like the tensile strength. They're way stronger than the steel that most other brands are using. So I don't think anybody should worry about them breaking. I tried to do my homework and do my due diligence to make sure that the parts would be high quality and durable.
That's actually one of the things I noticed. And I think you just ship, I could be, correct me if I'm wrong, obviously. I think you just ship the FR speed axle. Like the axles you ship FR axles, right? They're not Endless axles, right?
Yeah, we procure these axles from FR. These are their, it's an FR part number. I just buy like way more than anybody else. And those are steel, right? These are steel axles. And so
I don't have them. I swear, like again, I really don't mean to be picking on the Dragon. Oh, I do have my arcs right here. It's not attached to anything at the moment. I've gotten other frames that come with what appear to be aluminum axles. They just they just don't, they're light. They're a lot lighter, and I don't know. They make I don't know if they're any less durable or not, or that's just in my head.
If you have an aluminum axle, it's not going to be as strong as most steel axles are going to be. Again, it depends on, I wouldn't go on Alibaba and buy like a steel axle. Like I wouldn't do that. But if you buy an FR axle, like it's going to be stronger than an aluminum one. But it's like, we're not going to take some 1,000-pound fictitious man and throw him off a bridge wearing his rollerblades and see if the axles break. Like it's
Sure.
they're all fine. Like power slide, rollerblade, all use aluminum axles.
Okay.
I will say this, an aluminum axle and aluminum frame, there's less chance of the threads getting damaged because the aluminum axle is soft. And also you don't necessarily, like, see how there's the blue thread
The
locker
Loctite.
compound?
Yeah.
That's most important to have on a steel axle. But when you've got an aluminum axle going into an aluminum frame, it's kind of self-locking.
It kind of grips, right? Because it bends a little bit, or it's just softer.
The coefficient of thermal expansion is the same between two aluminum parts. So
Okay.
they just, it just, you don't get that mismatch.
That's what I was going to say. I just couldn't find the words for it.
Yeah.
I just had, right, aluminum, 6K versus 7K. Can you comment on that? Because that's another thing I see. It's like, I wish those are cool frames, but I wish they were 7K.
That's anytime anybody.
I don't know anything about aluminum, so talk to us about that.
Yeah, I would say anytime you see anybody like on Reddit just going on about how 6,000 series sucks and frame has to be 7,000 series, they don't know what they're talking about. It's all about choosing the right material for the application and the requirements, right? So 6,000 series, we use 6061 T6. It's very common material in aerospace applications, in aircraft industry. So if you hear people say aircraft grade aluminum, that's generally 6,000 series. If you hear people say aerospace grade, that's generally 7,000 series. Okay. The most common alloys are going to be 7075 and 7050. Extrusions might be made out of 7005. It's 7,000 series aluminum has a higher tensile strength, shear strength than 6,000 series. But again, like if I design the frames that we're designing are not strength driven for rec and urban skating. That's a different story when you're talking about speed skating and you're talking about getting the lightest frame possible. Because if you're going to take a bunch of weight out of the frame, you want the material to be stronger, right? So your strength, you want a higher strength to weight ratio. But in terms of a recreational or urban skate frame, like, again, we can take some 1,000-pound fictitious person, launch them off of a bridge, and like the frame isn't going to be the thing that breaks, Right. So the design tends to be stiffness driven is the way I look at it. And so 7075 versus 6061, like the modulus of elasticity it's almost the same. It's like something like a 5% difference. So do the materials feel and perform differently? Yeah, they do a little bit, but it's like in the noise for like the designs that I'm doing.
Okay.
So like 7,000 series is more expensive to machine. It's harder. But this is why, we anodize 6,000 series, is to give it a hard coating. So,
okay.
It doesn't make sense. I have yet to find an application where I want to use 7,000 series. It's not to say I won't, but when I do, it's going to be because it was the right tool for the job, not just because I want to have a certain marketing bullet point.
Sure. I mean, that's certainly relatable in my line of work too, in software. It's like right tool for the job.
There's no 8,000 series aluminum that I know.
Okay. That was from DJ Drift King, alive and well at 11:08. Let's see.
Someone said we need a frame speakeasy to hear all about the wet noodles. Oh,
yeah.
One day, well, I'll save it. One day I'm going to make a cool video to maybe educate people on wet noodles.
Okay. By the way, super sick. You added plastic sliders, the Analyst 9 UFS. Got to get them Macchios and big wheels.
Yeah, they're that was a fun thing to design. I had a really good design team for that. for the Endless 90 project and the 90 UFS project. Ricardo Lino helped out, Stephen Johnstone
Cool.
from Slick Willies, Cy Coburn, Kenan Scott, who you may know as Blading on the Brain.
Okay.
Who else helped out? Clark from Faction Skates.
Okay.
All those people contributed to making that slider what it is. So we actually put a lot of thought in testing into it.
Yeah. Cool. Here's an old one. Futures titanium mass grafted onto our bones. I mean, that's what everybody wants, right?
Yeah. I've thought about making
this,
a titanium frame, but
I think this is in reference to something we were talking about earlier. Joe McGarry from Mushroom Blading killing it in the Roasties 1992.
Yeah, man, rivets.
Go back to the rivet tech.
I have fond memories of my Lightnings.
Yeah, hockey skates. My hockey skates are too big. I realized this. I bought them a while ago, over a decade ago, and I tried to. My intuition for liners don't fit in there, but that was like I was like, ooh, I wonder if I could put my intuitions in this. Maybe if I gut them, they'll fit in there. Maybe that's something I should try because I'm not really using those hockey skates for anything. Yeah. Maybe I should gut my hockey skates and put intuitions in. I should do that. Yeah, I should write that down.
Yeah, someone said the stress strain curve. Yeah, he knows what he's talking
about. Somebody said what?
Oh, Mart said your stress strain curve between those two aluminum alloys for rec skating is negligible. Yeah, it's overkill. Like 6000 series aluminum is plenty strong for the application of rec and urban skating. Like,
sure.
I actually did do going back to the analysis question. Do I ever do analysis? I did when I was early on. I did a tear out analysis for the axles on the end. Like the end of the frames look like this. So I was curious, like how much load, or I was trying to like analyze, like how much force would there need to be applied for this axle to just like shear out,
pop out.
Okay. Yeah, just like rip through the end of the frame.
Right.
And it was just like a ridiculously high load. And I was like, oh yeah, these are good.
Okay. I've thought about that too. Honestly. I mean, I assume there's an engineer designing these things and my life's not a risk, but
I think I did like a 600-pound person jumping off, like falling off a 30-foot building. It's kind of my analysis case. It was quite extreme.
All right. That probably fits most cases. Okay. Yeah, I think I just have like a few more things I wanted to ask you, and then we can pretty much wrap it up. Sorry, were you showing something?
ArcCS, if anybody's curious.
Oh yes, I think that like I'd like to get your like thoughts on like why did the ArcCS happen? For those of you, I guess introduce it and kind of explain what it is and how it came about.
So this is the ArcCS frame. It's 76 millimeter wheels are the blue or the teal green ones, and then the cloudy gray ones are 68 millimeter wheels. I felt like wizard skating has been exclusionary for women, not on purpose or intentionally, but just by design of the frames being longer, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you've got a 5x80 setup, someone with a size 37 boot, it doesn't make sense to skate a setup that long. So I feel like if we're going to have more women and smaller footed people get into wizard skating, there's got to be a frame that's just more suitable for their foot length, just more appropriate. So I wanted to create something, that scaled appropriately on like a size 37 boot. And I thought, well, 5x72, maybe that could work. But when I skated 5x72, I was like, God, this sucks. It's so slow. And I was like, again, it goes back to the versatility thing. Like I want my setups to be versatile. I want somebody to be able to skate the setup. That's one thing I've learned with this company is that people will use the products for things you didn't intend. And so I don't want to make something that's just for one application because inevitably somebody's going to try and do something else in it. And so I thought, how can I make a short frame that has the speed of something that's more acceptable for just skating around with your friends or going on a group skate. And so I knew from the other arc frame development that I really liked the 76 millimeter wheels. And so with alternating the 76 and the 68, you get the same pivot spacing as you would on 5x72, but you've got those 76 millimeter wheels dominating the speed, right? Because essentially you can think of it as a 3x76 setup with two 68 millimeter like training wheels.
Sure.
And then because of the 68 millimeter wheel is, in that second position, that's
Mm-hmm.
what determines the ride height. So you get a ride
Right.
height that's lower than 5x72. So you're super low, which makes the whole setup more compact,
Sure.
lighter. And then you've got these 76 millimeter wheels giving you some decent speed. And so, yeah, this thing's a lot of fun. When I first tested it, I thought, okay, I'm going to test this thinking like maybe, I'm a small footed person. Does this thing suck? Does the rocker feel good? But I surprisingly really enjoyed it. And it felt like an ice skate to me. And I realized, hey, this is probably a good frame for people that are bigger than a size 39 boot. Maybe somebody that's looking for more of an ice skate like experience. They want something they can take to the rink.
Sure.
They want
Yeah.
something they can take to, a tennis court with their kids or whatever.
Right.
And it's just fun. You feel like you're on the ground, but you've got that really nice, smooth rocker. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. The that falls into the category of that thoughtful frame, like the endless. Not that they're all not thoughtful, but and I mentioned this earlier. The ArcCS, the 90ES. I think those are two examples of thoughtful frames that out of endless, where they're kind of hitting a category of people that don't necessarily are maybe looking for something. I was really excited. The only thing
Yeah.
I'm gonna pop my own question up. I loved that blue color of the
Oh yeah, the
ArcCS.
frost blue.
But that's the only one that comes in that color, right?
Yeah, I think I'm going to keep it exclusive to the CS
Okay.
for now, but we might see it in the future.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a really good color.
Here's Stephanie Law. Love the ArcCS, and yeah, I have large-footed friends that are super interested
Hey,
in two
Stephanie,
5-wheel maneuverability. Yeah.
everybody should go follow Stephanie's account. She can post it if she wants. Maybe I'll call her out. It's Steffi Blading. She has the ArcCS and she's a beautiful skater. She does a lot of slalom skating and she's recently been getting into some Wizard flatland stuff. And she's been just, tearing it up on the ArcCS frames.
Yeah.
And I think she's a size 39, if I'm not mistaken. She can correct me.
Yeah, I was always appreciative when she would post in Reddit. Now that I'm finally on Instagram, I see her stuff all the time. But I was always excited to see when she would post a video on Reddit. Super late to Instagram, me. Martz, this has been a great stream with tons of technical insight into skate and tech frame design. Thanks so much to Jim and Brad. Thank you for hanging out and participating. It's a huge thank you to everyone that's shown up, especially to Brad. I just think I wanted to ask like one or two things before I let you go.
Sure.
I wanted to go back to, and there's like stuff I wanted to get to that we're not going to get to, but can't talk forever because we could technically. But here's one. What's the next project? Maybe an endless boot in collaboration with Intuition. Like what? And follow-up question, like what's next for Endless? What do you got going on? Is there anything you can talk about tonight? Maybe that's in the works or anything. Let's hear it. What are you working on?
Yeah. So in the near term, I've got new wheels coming. We're gonna give everybody more colors in the existing wheels that Jim has, the black UC wheels. Gonna make those in some new colors. Will there be an endless boot? I don't have any desire to start making boots. I have lots of ideas about boots. I actually think if like I could marry the Twister XT with the FR1, it would be perfect. Like they both do some things that are good. But I do talk to manufacturers that are making boots, so maybe my input will get incorporated into some of those projects. Intuition collaboration, I'm a huge fan of Intuition. I think they've got like a little triumvirate going with FR, them skates, and Wizard skating. I don't know if they want to invite any other brands into their little club, but can you hear us, Jim?
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry. Darn it. I knew this might happen with the AirPods. That was a mistake. Sorry.
Right. I was saying about Intuition. I don't know if anything would ever happen there, but hey, I'm open to it. So if they want to get in touch. As far as other new projects, like I said, I'm seriously going to make myself a signature frame. But yeah, that's what I'm working on. I've got a bunch of new stuff I'm going to drop this summer.
Awesome.
So everybody can stay tuned for that. Stephanie knows what one of those things is.
Interesting. Okay. I think my computer just froze a little bit. All right, I'm back. Sorry. My apologies for all that fumbling. It was probably sounded awful on the microphone as I was fumbling around. Shouldn't use wireless headphones. Rookie mistake. Thank you. Sorry. Where do you think, a couple more questions. Where do you think rollerblading, not necessarily, yes, thank you so much, Gary DeLacy. Another, I see your comments on my channel all the time. They're all appreciated. Anyone who's in here that comments regularly, or the people who comment on my channel regularly, I do notice it. Thank you so much for the support. I have no idea why so many people come to my channel, but they do, and I really appreciate it. So, question: Where do you think rollerblading is right now in I guess especially in the free skate, urban, free ride kind of segment? Where do you think things are right now? You think it's in a good place or a bad place? What do you think the current state of things?
It seemed like last year there was more enthusiasm, just judging by, I feel like we got that big boost in 2020 and 2021, and then it's kind of settled down a little bit.
Sure.
But there's a lot of new companies, which is exciting. There's a lot of people, like we were talking about earlier, experimenting, a lot of new brands. I kind of wonder if there might be some saturation for certain segments. I'd love to see people focus more on quality over quantity. So instead of this idea of I'm going to start a skate brand, I need to make 10 different wheel sizes, 5 different boots, 16 different frames. My wish would be for that person or group of people to maybe just find the one thing that they can do that's totally unique and innovative and different, and just really dive deep on that one thing, So then we can all be doing cool, unique things and maybe collaborate together, as opposed to just all be competing with each other, doing the same stuff, which doesn't.
I think that makes sense. And I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying about Wizard. And again, I don't want to speak for Leon or the Wizard folks, but I think that's kind of what they're doing, right? Or he is doing, or they're doing, is they have a very specific thing they want to do and will do. And I'm sure they could produce their Wizard, right? They're never in stock. They would not have a problem selling anything they produce at this point, right? And so I think it's great that they're also not doing that and just saying, well, we could just put out a billion different frames. It very clearly comes across as, this is the thing that I want and that I know how to do best. And this is the thing we build because I can stand behind it, because it's just what I think is what, what's needed out there. But at the same time, I think it's probably good though, that there's this burst of thinking of a filter, where all of these ideas are hitting the market right now. And I used the word experimentation earlier.
Yeah.
And I would assume that over time, um, the better ideas will start filtering out, and you'll see like, because the designs that aren't working won't sell as well, you know, and you just won't see them on Instagram and YouTube and whatever. And the more desirable products will probably filter through that, you know what I mean? And like, maybe that's the next year or two, what might happen.
Yeah. I mean, well, how do you explain Impala? I mean,
uh,
but you know what's interesting is Powerslide just released or announced the other day. It looks like they're coming hard for Impala. Like
yeah,
they've got some really fun color combinations with the zoom setup. But I think it's going to be a much higher quality skate with a real aluminum frame and better wheels and bearings and probably a better liner. I haven't looked at the price point, but if anybody knows anybody that's thinking about buying an Impala, please steer them towards the Powerslide Zoom skates.
yeah, yeah. And I've never really, yeah, I would probably never try an Impala, but like, yeah, they just look mushy, and I don't know, they kind of look like toys to me. But
You know, it's so I bought one and I turned it into I put a Powerslide Trinity adapter on it and mounted an endless frame. It's on
okay,
it's in my Instagram feed. I posted like a year or two ago.
okay,
It the liner kind of sucks. Like the tongue is too mushy, and so it just doesn't have support. But I would imagine if I stuck an Intuition in it, it probably would be pretty good.
right,
Because
yeah,
the shell is like whatever, but I didn't exactly it was hard to get the frame positioned in the right spot. I kind of messed it up. If I were to ever do it again, I think I'd do a better job. If anyone
I
wants to
mean,
buy that skate from me, I'll totally sell it to them.
I think Mark's saying the shell is decent, at least.
Yeah,
Razor's
it's a
flat,
Colt.
super
It's a Razor.
flat.
It's the same as the
Colt, but
Razor's Colt.
yeah, it's one of those like open source molds or
Yeah.
whatever they're called, right? I mean, I do wish there were more colors available in skates, in everything, wheels, frames, skates. Like I'm typically the boring, give me the all black or the
Yeah.
all gray matte look personally, but I still wish there were more like hot pink and fluorescent yellow stuff out there, because
Oh, me too.
why not? People want it.
Well, you know they want it because somebody made it, and then we see that there's demand. And so I think that's what's happened the last few years is somebody's taken a risk, done something that might have been seen as bold or risky, and then it has some success and popularity, and then everybody goes, "Oh yeah, I need to make that too." And it's
Sure.
like it'd be nice to see, just if you have a good idea and you believe in it, just go for it. Like I realize, yeah, you're risking money, but like have confidence in your own taste, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we're on
Like
the pause.
when I
Sorry,
made
go ahead.
when I made those pink frames, like I made them because I loved that color. Like
Sure.
I didn't know that anybody else was going to like it.
I mean, who doesn't like hot pink? It's amazing. I think the
Yeah,
Barbie and
Barbie.
Paula's are already. Yeah,
They
that's
are.
like not surprising
You know
whatsoever.
what? I predict those are going to be the biggest selling skates of all time that end up in a landfill.
But they could also be the biggest flood of new skaters, right, into the industry, and it might just get more people. Like, one of the reasons I'm here, literally one of the reasons I created a channel, or at least evolved into that, is to just get more skating content out there and just try and get people to realize that skating's cool. So like, there's more videos out there when YouTube's doing its thing that suggests to people. So I hopefully, I don't know, maybe it'll just bring more people into the sport.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. I mean, but as we both know, like if you don't start with decent equipment, you might get turned off, because you'll be like, oh, this stuff hurts my feet. It's so slow. It's bumpy. I almost killed myself. Like,
yeah.
That's
DJ
funny.
Drift King check in, by the way. I got into it because of that Jack Tierney card. Sorry for calling you out, DJ Drift King. I'm just having fun. Jack Tierney, I'm sure everybody's seen that, where he's flying and a car door opens and he miraculously ends up sitting on his butt, just on like a little half wall.
Jack has some endless 100.
Yes, I've seen him and Nicola Torelli, another incredible skater. the last question, yeah, kind of the ended question, like where do you think roller, I guess we've kind of been talking about this, where do you think it's going to go, like given the current state, like the past, because let me start with this question, because you've been skating for decades and I haven't. It seems to me like the past 5-ish years, 6, 7, maybe, I don't know, has been like quite a change in like how many products there are. Like you were talking about, there was just rollerblade and like the FRs and the Sebas and everything. Seems like we're in a cool spot in that there's been like, it's not a resurgence overall, like the sport's big again or anything, but
Right.
there's like
But
all of
there's
a
like a
sudden there's
renaissance.
more, right? Like
Yeah.
there's more of it. And I feel like I'm kind of happy that I joined when I did. Like when I came back into skating, like endless 90s were available. And it's like, all right, I didn't even have to deal with anything else. Um, I guess my first question is, do you think that's accurate? And then that kind of leads into my next question, which is, where do you think things going 5 years or where do you see things going 5 years from now?
That's a good question. So I skated all through. So it was really popular in the mid to late 90s, like ridiculously popular. But then it started to wane like in the early 2000s.
Sure.
So I feel like I skated a good 15 years and it was only me skating. And I think the thing that I've noticed in the last 5 years is there's been this like convergence of rollerblading and social media, which didn't exist before. And I think that's brought like a social element to the sport that maybe was harder to find in the past. Like one of the best parts of Endless is I've met so many cool people around the entire world. Made tons of new friends. One thing I would love to do is take a trip and just go skate with all these different people. I think that's been one of the big things for skating. And I think that's going to help it grow, right? Because now it's like there's a connectedness element to it. But in terms of like the next 5 years, yeah, just see more of that, more social media content. I feel like the old business model of having like a skate team for a brand might be kind of dead.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Are you asking about like products and technology? Or are you asking about?
Yeah, I guess like, do you think it seems like things are on an uptick now? Do you think that'll keep going, or do you think we're kind of like at the apex of that bell curve where it's like it was flat and then it came up, and like it seems like, are we somewhere near that apex where it might go down? It might come up again later, but like,
I think we're still going up a little. It seems like there's
okay.
still new companies that
Yeah,
want
for
to
sure.
throw their hat into the ring in all areas. Wheels, aggressive skating products, urban skating products.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, 5 years from now, who's of all these companies that have popped up, which ones will still be around? Which ones are just passion projects versus like people trying to make legitimate businesses?
Sure.
I intend to still be around. Like I've got a bunch more ideas.
Yeah, actually, that I meant that. Yeah, I didn't write this one down. This I meant it to be my last question to you. Actually, more boot only offerings thanks in part to Endless. This is not my question. I'm just echoing.
I agree.
Yeah. Like I don't need another. I don't need another FR V3 4x80 flat frame. Like,
so I have to give a shout out to FR Skates for making that FR1 Deluxe Intuition available boot only. Because of that, we're able to offer custom Endless setups through the website. And I really wish that Rollerblade would do the same thing with the Twister. I've talked to them about it. I really think that they would sell a ton of Twister boot onlys, but they don't seem to be interested at this point.
They'd probably sell one to me potentially. That I really want to try a Twister urban boot, honestly, because it just seems like a good boot. I mean, I have my FR1 Intuition, so maybe I don't need to, but I don't know. I want to try everything.
You know what? So here's what I like about the Twister. It's got this, what they call an anti-torsion box structure at the base of the boot.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like Trinity to me in terms of like the rigidity of the mounting platform. And and just the overall construction and the quality of all the hardware is just really nice. It's just a well put together boot, and it's going to be, you know, it's a modern classic, that design with
Right.
those kind of, that faceted look. It's just, I think it's like one of the best looking boots ever designed.
I agree. I love those hard edges they put on. I'm not crazy about the FR1 looks wise, to be honest.
Right. It's grown on me, but I think the Twister looks better.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah. So my last question is, actually, let me just say this. Jose Rivas, really enjoy your videos where you ride on amazing streets and luxurious asphalt. Where are all the people in your town? All right, I'll answer this because thank you very much for giving us this live. I'll answer this because I get it so often on my channel. I skate. First of all, I avoid people because I don't want to endanger myself or other people. I'm just not into it. Like I feel like I have the ability to weave in and out of people, but I don't want to, because if I hit someone, that would be really bad. So I can't really skate the way I really want to skate if there are a ton of people around. Same with cars. So there's two things I do. I skate early in the morning. Like when I'm in Philadelphia, I'll skate 6, 7, 8 a.m. Usually is about as late as I'll start in the morning on like a Sunday. And I have the city to myself, and I can blast through it. And also, like if there's like areas that are more populated, I'll just stay away from those streets and just skate the less empty streets. So that's where all the people are. They're just not where I am at the time. The last question I wanted to ask you was, maybe you kind of partially answered, but like, what is the end goal? What is the end game for Endless? What is the dream? Like, where would you be in 5 years if you could be? Like, what do you want to do with this company?
I would love to have somebody doing my accounting for me.
Okay.
I just want to finish creating all the things that I have in my head. Like there's kind of a long list of ideas that I want to make and get out into the world. But yeah, and I would, like I've said, I would just love to take a trip and go skate with people. And it's at the point now, like Endless has gotten, has grown in popularity to where I go and skate around my town and I see random people I don't know that have Endless frames, which is crazy to me.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. It seems like there's a lot of Endless out on the streets.
And I'm always like, hey, are those Endless frames? And I'm like, I made those. And people are like, wait, what?
That's cool. That's cool. When I see someone skating, the first thought that comes to my head is, do people still rollerblade? I thought that died in the late 90s. But okay. Let me just check chat, see if there's anything that popped up at the end here. Just paint your skate frames. Oops. It's rigid. I don't know what that was in relation to. Just paint your skate frames, hit the rattle can, let it cure for at least 24 hours. Touch up as needed. Painted my Trinity 100, still holding up. I guess somebody else was talking about changing colors and boots and stuff. Let's see this. Would you sell if you got the right offer from one of the big brands? Doesn't seem too far-fetched.
Right now that doesn't seem like, anything I would entertain. But, in the future, if I was like all out of ideas and for whatever reason I was over it and wanted to retire, and like I'm older than I look. So like retirement is probably, not too far off in my distant future. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're a savvy business person, you always have to think about your exit strategy, but that's just not on my radar right now. There's too much stuff I want to do, and I'm having fun, most importantly. Like I've been blowing off my other business, which was doing really well and making me making me a decent living, but this has been way more fun recently.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's good to hear, because I don't have as many creative ideas in my head for like skate frames. Like one of our first conversations, you were like, do you have any ideas for frames? And I'm like, man, that's incredible. That's an incredibly hard question to answer. And I think part of it is like I'm so stuck inside of what we have, right? Like that's like the designer's dilemma sometimes, is like you're just so, or I guess good designers can break out of that easily, of like you just start with a concept you already have, and maybe that's not always the right way to approach designing things. I don't know.
I always start with what's annoying me.
Sure, solving problems.
Yeah, and it's like,
Yeah,
what's bothering me? What don't I like about my current setup? And like as I'm getting older, and like skating takes much more of a toll on me physically, I have different needs out of my equipment. And
sure.
so I think the designs you're going to see are going to, maybe it's going to be like, old man accessibility stuff. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, don't want to break your hip, kind of a design, right?
No. Yeah.
Um, awesome. All right. Well, I think I asked most of the question I wanted to get to. We're at 2 hours and 40 minutes. I can't thank you enough for doing this. I really,
Yeah, it
really
was fun.
appreciate it. And I can't thank everyone in chat enough, or everyone who tuned in, or everybody who supports the channel and who supports Brad and Endless. I can't thank all you fine people enough as well. I'll just throw this one up. Live vendors play. Thanks for the time tonight. P.S. We need the new t-shirt offerings.
Yeah, I know. If anybody wants to pitch me on t-shirt design ideas, I'm totally open. It's been on my list, but I just don't care about designing t-shirts. Even though somebody told me that they used to have a skate company and half their revenue came from soft goods sales.
Wow, really?
So like as the businessman in me is like thinking I'm leaving a lot of money on the table by not selling people t-shirts, apparently.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, there's some
Endless
brands
soft
that
good.
sell a lot of soft goods, so they're clearly doing it right.
Great conversation. Thanks for answering my questions too. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Great interview. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks,
Can't agree
everybody.
more. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
All right. Bye.
Take care. Bye.